Hello and welcome to the Nash Tackle Off the Hook podcast. Just to make you aware, this podcast may contain some explicit/offensive language, and if that's not your thing, you don't have to listen, but I have given you a warning. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
You don't know the half of it, but anyway. I'm skating on the thinnest ice known to man.
He said, and they put a poison in the tank that just instantly kills them. He went, and we've run out of it, so we cut their heads off with shovels.
Suddenly, bang! The whole boat exploded.
Take your sort of 8-inch long piranha and imagine that at 4, 5, maybe 6 feet.
I said, I've revived your dead fish. F off, he said. You haven't.
That was just humongous. It was... I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
I'm just battling this fish out in the pond. I know it's a black man. I'm saying I'll never be a naughty boy again.
If you catch fish and you return them to the water, then you are my brother.
Ash Bradbury, welcome to the Nash podcast, mate. How the devil are you?
I'm great, mate. Thank you very much for the invite. Amazing.
Not at all, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. We've been trying to get it sort of sorted over the course of time for a while, but you're a busy man. Things are busy, as they always are. But you dropped me a lovely text, mate, on Saturday as we were coming in to do this with a picture of an absolutely mega common, mate, from your own lakes, weren't they, mate? You've had a good weekend, haven't you?
Oh, a great weekend. Well, it was my daughter's birthday, and on Saturday, birthday party on Saturday, her birthday yesterday, but yeah, I managed to sneak a couple of nights in and around the football as well. So sort of did my duties during the day, but came back to the lake at night, and yeah, managed to sort of, I guess, fluke one of the ones I wanted to catch, one called Tatty Tail at £38.
£38, it was mega, mate. You look clean as a whistle.
Oh, it's a proper old one, like proper lovely old mire common. You know, one of the classic ones that are in there.
Yeah, mate, top angling. We're going to talk about the whole mire situation, your lakes, and various other like elements. There's bait, there's invention, there's mega sort of old school work on carp fisheries of sort of infamous note. But where I wanted to start with you, mate, I think realistically, there's so much depth, I think, to your carp fishing. Having spoke to you planning this podcast, I wanted to start at the very start. So for you, carp fishing, when did that and how did that whole carp buzz play out for you, mate?
God, it goes right back to when my dad first started taking me fishing, really. Literally to the old cane with a bit of rope on the end, catching rudd. And in this particular lake, in Thorley it is, in Bishop Stortford, next to a church, was this, what seemed like at the time, a leviathan of a carp. Like, it was probably only £10, but in and amongst these little 3-inch rudd, this thing would come up and take whole pieces of bread.
Just one carp?
One carp. There was no other carp in this lake, but it was like, I do have a picture of it. It's not great, unfortunately, but like, it used to literally, you throw a whole slice of bread in and it'd come up and take the whole thing. So it was like, and I was probably 4 years old at that point. Right. And that sort of started the whole process, I guess, of what led to today, really.
From that point of sort of seeing them, and I think it's similar to every carp angler in a way, obviously you had your dad there as a reference point with regards to somebody who was obviously an angler and guided you through that. Your sort of development from just catching anything on a bit of cane and sort of roach into the world of carp, that first carp, was that the point at which you sort of couldn't return and you were a carp angler from then on? Or have you always sort of had a bit of a multi-species element within your angling?
I've probably for the first 10, 15 years, it was definitely multi-species, anything from sea fishing to trout fishing. Like, my dad bought me I've still got the same trout rod that I still use today for fly fishing for carp, like over 20 odd years on. And so, yeah, I guess I started a lot. Well, Dad would take me, like, we'd go to the rivers on the weekend, you know, catching little brown trout, minnows, sticklebacks. I spent years in a little village. We had these 3 ponds, and any chance I could get when I was really young, like I was probably 8 to 10 years old, I'd be catching sticklebacks all day. Like little gudgeon, sticklebacks, minnows. It was brilliant. Unfortunately, those little ponds now have dried up. which is a bit of a shame when we do go back there. We normally, because there's a big row of conker trees that we go to every autumn and take the kids now.
Banker conker spot. That sounds like good, mate.
It's mega. It is mega. But yeah, so I guess early days was lots of that, just that traditional way, that natural progression, I guess, compared to the likes of today where it's like almost an instant.
What do you think about that? Like, in terms of, like, I look back at it, obviously, as similar to you, very sort of fond memories of sort of plumbing the depth, catching little fish. But nowadays it seems, especially with a lot of, I'm not digging them out, it's just the way of the times, but a lot of kids wouldn't be interested necessarily in catching smaller fish. They want a big and straight away.
That's it.
That sort of instant sort of hit, if you like.
Oh, the nostalgia of it, going back, because everything was slower paced, wasn't it, in those days, like compared to today. Like, having said that, my boy, he absolutely loves rudd fishing.
Does he?
We built these platforms on the lakes, and he stands on the end of these platforms fishing for rudd from the moment the daylight comes up in the mornings when we stay at the lakes, like in June when we shut the lakes basically for spawning. He'll get up first thing. I'll be sat there having a coffee, and he'll be like, right, I'm going fishing, and off Alfie trots with him as well, our dog, and they sit there all morning just catching rudd after rudd after rudd.
I'd say that is just got to be your influence as well, though, on that, hasn't it, mate? Because I think that's very, maybe it isn't, maybe there are a lot of kids doing that, but from what I see, it tends to be sort of straight into what we deem now as buzzers and carp fishing.
He loves carp fishing, but I've been really careful. Like, he's still not got his own set of rods.
Yeah.
He's got one rod that he loves telling everyone these spots and stuff like that. He don't get me wrong, he does love the carp fishing side of it, but that watching the float thing, I think, is mesmerising, isn't it, as a kid? You know?
Mate.
And then he's trying to stalk the smaller carp, obviously the stockies that we put in, the tench. Like, when there's a tench swimming past, he's like, Dad, there's a tench. Like, he absolutely loves it. And he caught a pike one day. He hooked a rudd, and a big pike took the rudd, and you should have heard the excitement from him. Right? And we've landed it as well. We've got a picture of it and everything.
How big was it? Good, double.
I wouldn't say it was double. It was probably like mid 5-6 pound, but it was big enough that he was like, he couldn't believe it, you know. So hooked on a little size 10.
Cool.
So fair and square in the scissors. Where obviously it's tried to take the rudd, but. Yeah, I mean, I guess his natural progression, whether he ends up being a carp angler, I don't want him to be. I think I'd like him to fish.
Yeah.
But I know with me, the obsession that took over when I was young, maybe it kept me out of trouble.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like when you're 15, 16 and stuff, and you're finding out the world and all the rest of it, but all I wanted to do was go fishing or climb a tree or go shooting or... You know,
really, even at like 16, like ladies and sort of nightclubs and drinking, all that didn't come into play.
Oh, it was. The night I caught my first 20-pounder, there's me at Duke's, literally a few hours later, pissed up on the balcony, thinking I was the best thing since sliced bread.
What a
and no one had a clue what was going on, but apart from my little head was like, yes, I've just caught my first 20-pound carp, and this was after watching, obviously, probably at that point, how old would I have been? 18, 17. You know, watching Passion for Angling 7 years, 8 years earlier, you know, dreaming of those days of sitting there behind some fox buzzers, you know.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Was that the influence then, Passion for Angling? Go fishing?
Go fishing was first.
Yeah.
You know, John Wilson was definitely first, you know, and that the carp episodes were always the ones that got you going, and the pike and roach and stuff, but the carp were definitely... I don't know, there's just that draw to carp, isn't it? It's like that mystery, isn't it? Because some of them big ones just don't get, even like in our lake, some of the big ones just don't get caught, or they get caught very seldom. It makes it really special when you do catch them, you know. But yeah, I guess at 17, 18, you know, obviously going to college after school, went Spar Shoal, we were going out, but equally I wanted to be fishing, you know, just every second I had. But it's so time consuming, isn't it? That big fish, and I instantly got into the big fish side of fishing. Like I love targeting or trying to catch a 30-pounder, then trying to catch a 40-pounder, and trying to catch a certain fish from a certain lake, and that was just the buzz of that was was mega, absolutely mega. Like, and it still is today. Like, if there's a fish I want to catch, my whole life suffers. my missus, but I have to be really careful now. Obviously, with 2 kids, 2 businesses,
you've got a lot on your plate, mate.
It's and so I can't dedicate the time that I would like to. And a lot of my fishing now is like this weekend, where I got to do a couple of nights in between everything that was going on. Like, it's quite special, really, you know, because I don't get much of that time these days.
When you are fishing, is it, and this is going to sound pretty odd, is it as, I don't know, as exciting, as sort of captivating as you fishing was maybe when you're 17, 18, where you've got your phone's not ringing, you've not got emails to worry? Can you switch off and just immerse yourself in fishing? Or is it a case of, right, I've got a very busy life, there's a lot going on, and I might be fishing, but I've also got to, at the same time, check my emails. If the phone's ringing, I'm going to answer it. It might be work related, it might be home related, whatever. Is it like that, or is it complete shut off and you can just get your head into pure carp fishing? I
think, like Friday, for example, we've got back down. I've gone and picked Connor up from school. We've got down the lake to go and watch the football for Friday night, like in one of the shelters. Built a big solar system. We've got TV up, all the rest of it. But like, while I'm trying to get my rods out, my phone's ringing, people are asking questions, bait related, etc. And it is really, really hard now to switch off. But I think there's different times in your life as well, where a few years ago when the kids were younger, I was knackered all the time, obviously trying to work, kids, etc. I'd just go fishing just to have that little bit of downtime. I was very fortunate that in those days I could do a Thursday night.
Right.
And that was, for a couple of years, I pretty much just went and chucked the rods out and just chilled for 12, 16 hours.
Yeah.
But then when I'm on it, I'm on it. Like, I will put every second of that time I'm there into catching those fish. You know, like, I had a period last year where on the top lake, I had a bit of time to do some filming with Joe from Carp Angle, but I hardly slept.
Yeah.
You know, like, just every show was information in terms of where I needed to be fishing if I wasn't fishing that area, you know. And then the next day I'd get up, marker that spot to death until I found, you know, the spot that I actually wanted to put the rig on, and then generally put the rig on that night, and then I get a bite. And one night I got 4 bites off one of those spots, you know, like just by seeing one show. And I've got this little app on my phone that I can basically work out exactly how far I need to be fishing to give me an idea. So what I'll do is I'll see a fish show from my swim, for example. I'll then go around to another swim and try and triangulate that and pin it.
The show was.
And you literally pin it from one side to the other, from the other side to the other, and it'll tell you your wraps within half a wrap even.
What is this piece of...
Yeah, it's good.
You need to tell me that off camera.
It is
That
good.
sounds mega.
But the last few years, literally, I've caught all my fish doing that. Even if I'm going to a venue I've not been before,
yeah,
I pre going there, I'll work out areas that I think are going to be the likely areas for that trip. Like, we went to Oxley's last year,
yeah,
and we knew we had certain swims. They were good enough to basically, because we're going down there filming for a couple of days.
Yeah.
They were good enough to say, right, you can have these swims for when you get there. And there was one swim I was like, yeah, I wanted to fish that out into the open water, and all I did was triangulate where I thought I needed to be, and literally the fish started showing there 100 yards out, found the spot and had, I don't know, half a dozen 8 bites off it in a couple of days, and it was great fun. And
just like finned marker floats, mate.
It is a proper edge if you learn how to use it, and it gives you a guide. So say, I don't know, it works it out that it's 20 wraps. I'll clip up at 20 wraps and then sort of start in that area and go a little bit longer, a little bit shorter until I found like where I think there's a feeding spot. And it just probably saves loads of casts that ordinarily, you know, you would have to do.
So you've seen one show, or maybe 2 show, whatever, in that area, you've triangulated it, you've got the wraps, you're on 20 wraps. The first thing that's going out is a marker lead.
Yeah.
And you're going to look for a feeding spot. For you, feeding spot, talk to me about what that is. Is it a textbook firm donk? Is it silt when the rest of the lake's made up of gravel mainly? How do you decipher that?
All depends on the time of year.
Okay.
generally in the spring, I'm probably looking for light weed, fishing chod, stifflinks over that, scattering a boilie. So basically, if you triangulate it and you get a half decent drop, you know you're fishing. Because the fish are that much more mobile in the spring. They haven't been caught over the winter. They're a sucker for a pink one or a yellow one or whatever. And then come summertime, once they've spawned, then I'm fishing spots. Then I'm fishing gravel spots, like small gravel spots that I can find in amongst those areas. And then in the winter or autumn coming into winter, it'll be more the silty areas.
Yeah.
So I did a couple of nights on the top lake a month or so ago, and I fished the clean spots, and I didn't get a bite. And I was like, I should have been in the silt.
Yeah.
Next trip, went back with filming with Carp Cafe, and had half a dozen bites in a couple of days, all fishing in the silt. But all I'm doing is looking for the cleaner silt within those areas rather than the real soft drops. I'm looking for that. It's sort of a firm but soft drop, if you know it is a particular type of drop. And you start off with that. I mean, last year there was a couple of spots I started were like that, but by the end it was like dropping on concrete where they'd just been literally smashed the bait. Yeah.
For you, that marker-led process, and you talked about that going out there, do you think you'd rather do that and find the spot within that area than just put a rig straight out if you've seen them show?
I have done that. I did catch last year literally by triangulating it.
And just putting
I was using a bait boat at the time. Obviously not everyone's a fan of bait boats, but I don't see the difference between using a bait boat and a pole. Like if you're going to use 50 sections of pole to drop your rig, why not use a bait boat? At the end of the day, there is no difference. You're effectively doing the same thing.
Pole's a bit carpier, isn't it?
It's carpier. But
of course it is, mate.
I've got a pole. I haven't got one of the Nash ones, but I've got my own homemade ones that I bought. I love the telescopic ones. They're only 10 metres, so you can't actually use them very well, I guess, compared to the Nash ones, which you can go out 100 yards or whatever. But I think... Yeah, the stigma around bait boat use, I don't really like bait boats with echo sounders because I think...
Well, that's too much.
Yeah, I think, especially on small... Don't get me wrong, if you're going to France for a week and you're fishing a 100-acre lake, crack on, you've got to do whatever you've got to do, whether it be drone like a lot of people are using now or going out in the boat and actually echo sounding it properly. But in small, intimate venues where you can use a bait boat, I see we've actually banned echo sounders on bait boats on the lakes. Yeah, because... The mire's 9 acres, the top lake's 6 acres. Like those fish spend their whole life feeding on certain spots. The last thing I want is someone turning up, going, "Oh look, there's a clean spot." Oh, drop. There's no skill in that for me. Whereas working out where the fish are showing, I'll then lead as a rule, and then use my boat to drop it. But I hold my rod a certain way when I'm leading up, so that it's as if I'm using the boat. Like there's lots of little fine details that I do.
Go on, talk to me. That sounded deep. I hold my rod in a certain way so it's like I'm using a bait.
Yeah, so if I'm just casting, I'll hit the clip. Obviously the rod pulls forward, but I'll always bring it back and just hold it almost at 90 degrees. But when you're dropping with a bait boat, you need to follow the rig down. So I'm hitting the clip and effectively lowering the rod as if I've just dropped it from the boat.
Okay. Yeah.
So that everything's in sync. So when I do use the boat, it drops on literally a dinner plate spot.
Because if you hold that rod up when you're dropping from a boat, you're dragging your rig towards you away from the bait.
The deeper the water, obviously, if you're in 15 foot, you're going to be maybe half a rod length away from your main baited spot, which you do get bites from bigger fish when you're fishing off a baited spot. But I like to have my rig right on the edge of where the main bait would be. Yeah. So, yeah.
So you follow it down with that. And if you're using a bait boat, and you're dropping from that bait boat, something again we've not really talked about, I don't think, on a podcast. When you're dropping from that, do you like to drop while your bait boat is moving so you've got some form of spread, or do you drop with your boat pretty much static?
No, it'll be static. So it'll be obviously in the clip. Yeah. And I'll be pulling the bait boat forward so the tip is... So there's that tension as if you're casting again. Yeah. But you want the timing has got to be almost perfect, basically. So when you with the gear stick, you've just pulled it forward slightly so you can feel the tip. You sort of you're pulling against it and everything, and then you open the hoppers and follow it down, and it's
on
an edge.
The money.
And in the autumn, I think especially these days, because they have their feed up traditionally a lot earlier these days. I think because they're fed well through the year, they're bigger earlier, aren't they, than traditionally 20 years ago when they're still hungry in sort of October, November time. Yeah. I fish very small amounts of bait, even though I own a bait company and I could use loads of, I could use as much bait as I feel like I need to. I'm effectively using 3 spoms worth per boat.
Really?
And that gets me the bites. It gets me quick bites as well as giving them a bit of food.
Is that a general theme for your angling when you use sort of enough bait to get a bite, no more, no less? Is that general theme?
Yeah, traditionally where I've thought, I'm going to give them loads of bait, like just going to give them loads of bait, it doesn't always work. So now, because my time is so much more limited, I'll always fish for a bite to start with, whether that be 3 spoms, 10, 15 spoms. I very rarely put 100 spoms out, these days, but that way at least I can build a session very quickly. Like at Lucy's Bowl, we did 30 kilo bait, but that was...
Yeah, you've been very consistent at Lucy's Bowl as well, haven't you, mate? How many times you fished it?
I've done 3. I think I've done 3 years on the South Lake now.
Yeah,
but this is the first year my basically the person who bidded to fish with me actually turned up. So the first year, the chat. What happened? I think he got diarrhea and vomiting the night before, no. And then the second year, obviously COVID.
Yes.
So he got COVID literally the morning of it. He's tested positive. To send him with the picture, and then Mark's actually turned up this year. But at least I got the chance to sort of show him what to do, and we had a great weekend.
You did. You had a very, very nice red mire common, didn't you?
To catch one of them old 90s stocking red mires is, you sort of dream of catching a fish like that from. I know Wraysbury's completely different now, but still they're old fish, and to catch that one in I don't know how many fish do you reckon are in the south? 1,500, 2,000 fish.
There's a lot of fish in there, mate.
So.
If I can catch them, there's a hell of a lot of fish. Probably more than that.
And you caught the biggest one as well, didn't you?
That's just pure spawn.
So,
mate, there's an incredible stock of fish in there. But to catch sort of a red mire, one of the sort of bits of history, if you like, that are remaining. Yeah, that's a mega capture in amongst all that. For you on there, obviously the event's brilliant, raising money. Like the guys who organise it, Gary Bays is heavily involved. A lot of the lads here obviously are heavily involved as well. But in terms of sort of that whole, guide dogs, funding things and the charity is brilliant. But the organisation of the event, it's a massive event, isn't it?
I think it's the biggest charity event there is, isn't it? I mean, 40, 50 grand a year they raise on effectively one weekend. I mean, the amount of prizes there are, the raffle that there is.
Yeah, it's a big old raffle, isn't there?
200 and something prizes in the raffle. It's one of the most supported charity events of the year, isn't it? Within carp fishing, anyway.
For you, the fishing on there, the keys to it, as I said, you've been very consistent. I know you've not necessarily had a partner apart from the last year, but the 3 years you fished it, you've done very well. Haven't you? Did you win it one year? Am I right in thinking you won it?
There's a bit of politics there, wasn't there?
But I think you were pretty close.
I think I should have won it all 3 years, to be honest. I've won it this year. No, the first year, obviously, because I didn't have a partner, it didn't count, did it? So,
but you caught every year well, mate, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been good fun. Yeah.
What's been the key there then? Obviously, you've got a decent. Obviously, it's a big old sheet of water. There's a lot of people fishing it, but with regards to where you're placed, you're pretty much randomised drawn an area, aren't you? You don't get your pick.
No, I get told which swim effectively. I get to fish. It's bait really, and I guess this year I got lucky. There was a lot of fish in the area that I was in this year. Big weed beds. They were held up there in numbers, and we were just picking them off effectively.
A lot of bait, or just bait on per bite, like you were saying before?
Again, just fish for a bite.
So you've not gone out there and blapped out 10 kilos?
No, literally 10 spoms, maybe 15 to start with, and then build it. Because it's summertime, it's August, they're hungry post-spawning.
Yeah.
It's perfect timing, really, to give them a bit of bait, but I'll still fish for a bite at a time. And you just build a hit. The first year on the south, I think I had 50-odd fish.
That's a great bit of work.
But we did actually, they went out in the boat and put some bait in for me, and it was, so that I did use quite a bit of bait that.
But you'd already had bites before that.
Oh yeah, I had like 20 odd bites before that. Jeez. You know, but that was all off spomming 10 spoms every few fish. You know, or basically as soon as the liners would stop or the bites would stop, I'd introduce a little bit more bait in, and it would start again. So yeah, it's just reading the situation. Getting, I don't know, I sort of when I'm fishing, I sort of get in the mind of the fish.
Yeah,
it's probably a bit weird, isn't it?
Deep,
know, like yeah, it's.
What do you start doing? Like sitting in the water with your eyes under?
I'm just trying to visualise and figure out what's going. Like I use my alarms as an extension of what's going on in the swim.
Yeah,
you know, the way I set my rods up, the way I have my bobbins, the certain amount of slack, etc. So I'll get indications from the fish if they're feeding or if they're not feeding.
So you ain't fishing bowstrings. You like a little drop, so you're gonna any line or any fish moving in that area that you're gonna know about it.
Yeah. As a rule, I fish either semi-slack or slack.
Yeah, even at range,
up to 100 yards.
Yeah,
semi-slack at 100 yards. And then,
on braid as well.
On braid, yeah.
Oh, you love playing the old flirting with the edge there.
I mean,
mate.
The bites are incredible, right? But you know, it works for me. I wouldn't say it works. It would work for everyone, but the way I fish works for me, and yeah, I guess that's all you can figure out for yourself, isn't it? You know, that's what when people say you need to fish like this, you need to do this, I think the biggest thing is figure out what works for you. You know, if using loads of bait works for you, use loads. If you're fishing 3 on a spot works for you, I hate fishing 3 on a spot.
Do you?
I couldn't think of anything worse. Because I know if I get a bite, I'm wiping my other 2 rods out. Like, I done it at Lucy's Bowl. I put 2 on a spot. The amount of times I wipe the other rod out, and then I'm like, I've got no rods in the water.
Well, if you're catching 50 without 3 on a spot, mate, you're doing all right. There's enough there. Do you know what I mean?
But I like fishing 3 spots. As a rule, I like fishing 3 different spots.
Do you think that harks back to the sort of waters that you fished, and we're going to talk about historical waters you fished, and the sort of big fish mentality with regards to sort of singling out bigger fish? Because it does seem that maybe more modern day anglers or anglers that are brought up on sort of more modern commercial venues, 3 rods on a spot is the one. It's very rare that you'll see people probably not do it. There's different degrees to 3 rods on a spot. Anybody's watched me fish 3 rods on a spot and then watched Tom Maker fish 3 rods on a spot, they might as well be fishing 3 different spots in my case. But obviously those 3 rods are fished in on a spot to multiply potentially 2 or 3 bites from that same area when the fish come onto you. For you, big fish hunting, singling out sort of the bigger fish and target fishing, I don't know. Maybe Elstow back in the day, obviously, when you're fishing on the bars. But again, like generally those bigger fish sort of target, I don't see as fishing 3 rods on a spot as much, maybe. Would you say that's where that's come from for you? That sort of, or is it just a case of it's not effective fishing because you're wiping your other lines out?
Yeah, I think when you're fishing for a big one, 1 line in the right area is all it needs. The moment you put 2, those big fish, they're not stupid. They're looking for your lines. Like on the mire, they literally swim up to your swim, look at you, and swim back out again. You know that, and you know they've just come looking for your lines. Like, and so many people have seen that now, and they did it at I remember the Essex Manor. The first time I was there, virtually, like I remember them coming up the shelf, swimming through my lines, and then back out into the lake.
Just clocked them and gone.
Yeah. I was using Daiwa sensor, brown line, and then eventually when I went on to fluorocarbon, the old X line, the initial, the early days of X line, they didn't have a clue what was going on.
Yeah.
Because the lines just sunk from your tip and you got so many more bites because of it.
What do you think nowadays with regards to that? Because I've been out there from a boat, looked through an aquascope, I've seen heavy fluoro and I've seen how it sort of fractures a weed bed. And I mean, it's not visible, but it's blatant where it is in terms of you can see the line at a spot. Yes, you maybe could get a little rake and maybe just give yourself a little bit better line lay, but you're not really going to know that without the hindsight of a boat. No. Realistically, you're thinking you're doing things as best you can.
Yeah, I think with fluorocarbon, obviously sediment in the water will pick up on that, so that will give the game away. But as a rule, if that line is pinned, so the Essex Manor just had siltweed basically down the shelf.
Yeah.
They didn't have a clue it was there because that's sinking into it.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's not got any hindrance. Obviously, fishing relatively short range, aren't you?
Yeah, you're not fishing more than 30, 40 yards max. You know, if that. So yeah, there's no hindrance. It just comes straight out.
Back leads where possible for you if it works.
Yeah,
you're one of them, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm one of them. Yeah, back. So a little technique I've been doing lately. Definitely caught me some fish last sort of month or two, where I'm actually holding my flying back lead with the boat. So the boat's going out, and I let the boat go out about 30 yards before I let go of the flying back lead in my hand. So I know that last sort of 30, 40, 50 yards is pinned to the bottom. And then obviously I've got my leader with a bit of putty at the end and all that malarkey, just to, all those little things I think make a difference when you're big fishing. Line concealment is one of the biggest things of them being at ease, feeding. They let their guard down, you get a bite.
Any other additional sort of things line concealment wise? We talked about, obviously you've referenced the Mere and the top lake, your lakes, Ashbury Fisheries. We talk about they're quite relatively sort of small, big carp, quite a pressured environment. It doesn't throw up 50 bites a weekend.
No.
And they're bigger fish, just generally that type of fishing. But those edges, I think, are magnified from what I've seen on those smaller sort of intimate, if you like, venues. Anything else that you've used around line concealment apart from fluorocarbon where possible, this back lead technique with the boat we've talked about? Any other bits and bobs that have sort of gleamed you maybe a couple of bites in the past?
It putty up the line and things like that, at various stages. Probably the biggest edge would be the old washing line.
Yeah.
I've used that for over 20 years, and I remember seeing now a friend of mine doing it for the first time, and I'm looking at his rods going, what is going on here? Like, rods up, line going to the far bank, and I'm looking at him and he's like, yeah, this is good, isn't it? I was like, I want to get involved in this. This is, he's caught a couple, and just so if you're fishing in a bay and you can cast to the other side and washing line it, you've not got that line going straight through the swim again. Yeah. And that you're only fishing maximum probably 2 or 3 rod lengths from your bank stick. And they have no idea there's a rig there. Well, obviously if they can see your lead and they know which your hook bait is and stuff, but again, they're not hitting your line as they're swimming through the swim, so they're approaching your baited spot not on guard straight away, which I think helps.
For you on the washing line, how do you fix it with regards to the bank stick? What do you use? I know that Al uses, I've seen Al do it a number of occasions, but he uses sort of I think it's a catfish clip. You can adjust the tension on it. Yeah. So you can really ramp your rods to it. But obviously when the fish takes, you get that sort of massive drop back and you're in.
Yeah, I've always used elastic bands.
Have you?
Yeah, normally a couple of elastic bands doubled up, But now I use 2 elastic bands at different levels. So I make the loop and then put the loop through the other elastic band. So there's no chance of it wrapping over the top of the stick. Yeah. And it's no different to, the pressure that's needed to pull it out.
And then so you're obviously tight to the elastic band system, 2 bands so your loop doesn't get caught on your bank stick, and then you're as slack as possibly can be to wherever your lead is in the margin. Yeah.
It's mega.
Like, yeah, they're good, mate. They are good. It's just a nightmare if you've got birds about sometimes, isn't it? Can be.
Keep them off.
Rigs, we'll talk about it because we're here. For you, before we sort of go back in time, look at chapters, captures, etc., where do you stand on that? Big fish, obviously, generally, but obviously you fish for everything and you're a very prolific sort of carp angler, as you've proven on Wraysbury there with regards to number of bites. What significance, what sort of, when I say rigs, sort of stands out to you? There's a big intake of breath there.
Oh, yeah. So these days I've probably got 3 or 4 rigs that I use, and the one I'm using at the moment, I call it the Bonnie. It's the bottom Ronnie. So
you've never got a bottom bait on a Ronnie rig?
It's a Ronnie rig setup.
Right.
But using a critical hook bait, effectively.
Okay.
So I'll use a critical plus a corn, one of the corns, as to balance the hook bait out to make it top heavy or top light, so the hook is heavy. So when it picks up, the hook hangs down like a claw.
So basically, you've taken what would be a normal wafter,
Yes.
And then you've made the sort of balance in that bait top heavy by putting a buoyant corn in your case on top.
On
yeah?
top, yeah.
So it's still sort of a real slow sinking.
It sinks quite quick.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it does sink quite quick, but the hook bait itself sits up, obviously, because of the
corn.
Because of the buoyant corn.
Yeah.
And then when the fish picks it up, that hook instantly and like basically angles as a claw. And if it's in the mouth, it's in trouble.
And that's just a standard Ronnie arrangement with regards to the rest of the rig?
Pretty much, yeah. I do tie, so the knot onto the Ronnie swivel.
Yeah.
I tie a Palomar knot.
Okay.
So I don't do a loop there.
Yeah.
Because I think once it goes in the mouth, it's that much harder to eject.
Okay.
So yeah.
Stiff hook length?
Just £20 IQ, like
Fluorocarbon.
Fluorocarbon, yeah.
Yeah? Lead clip, heli?
Lead clips are my preferred. For that rig, I like to use a lead clip because I'm fishing cleaner spots. Not super clean, but generally cleaner spots.
When do you switch then? What does a spot need to be for you to switch to a heli? Or do you lengthen your hook length from fishing with lead clips?
I'll try and use a lead clip. Over the years, I have used helis a lot with Ronnies.
Yeah.
With proper, like pop-up Ronnies.
Yeah.
You length, obviously then you put your bead higher up if you're fishing,
You allow for it, yeah.
Yeah. But as a rule with that particular rig, I'll use it with a lead clip only. Yeah. It's better hooking properties.
Right.
So.
And then obviously for you, you've got that as your sort of, if you like, go-to that's been doing well recently. You said that there's a couple of others. What would be your pop-up if you needed a sort of a high pop-up? Would it be something like a hinge?
Yeah, the hinge rig is definitely. I've traditionally caught a lot of fish on hinge rigs, but for the last, I guess 7-8 years now, it's all been about the Ronnie.
Yeah,
literally recently 2 bits of corn. Before that, it was corkball pop-ups.
Yeah,
I was fishing in non-publicity water, and obviously no one had used that rig at the time, and I was fishing in the silt with the helicopter set up, and it was unbelievable how good that was. If I got the fish feeding, it was a bite every time.
Type of hook on that rig? What you got, curved?
Curve shank, yeah.
Yeah, straight point?
I'm quite picky with straight point, yeah. I am quite picky with which hooks. I've tried loads of different hooks on them. I get hook pulls off certain ones, but there is one hook from Fox that I use that I just know if that goes in,
job done.
Yeah, the curve shank, not the medium curve, the curve shank from Fox, and then the claw from Cord is good as well. Like if it's a bit stronger, like again at Wraysbury, I was using curve shank on my left hand rod because it was an open water rod.
Yeah.
I was using the claw on my right hand rod because there was a lot more snags.
Right.
And I could just give them a little bit more.
On that, a sharpener or a non-sharpener when it comes to hooks?
During the summer, I don't sharpen.
During the summer,
one
does not sharpen. Okay.
It's a little bit mad, isn't it? I'll literally, so 10 hooks in a pack, isn't there? I'll pick the sharpest hooks out of that pack. If they're not sharp, they don't get used.
Right.
But I don't like to sharpen because they rust. Whereas in the winter, I use Kamakuras. So I've just literally this weekend just gone, I've been using the standard cranks.
Yeah.
I was like, no, it's now it's finicky time. Now they're feeding
percentages of sharpened hook.
that sharp, and maybe I caught that fish because of it. There wasn't another bite on the whole complex the weekend. And
but the points don't corrode there. You don't get that if you're fishing in the sort of silt.
No, once the water temperatures have dropped, I don't generally have a bite. The only issue you do have is leaves at this time of year. They're a lot easier to prick a leaf, and then your rig's not
effective.
Yeah, as effective, definitely. So,
dudes. Yeah. All right, that's an interesting insight. Any other sort of presentation-wise, away from pop-up, that wafter style Ronnie, anything else in there that is a go-to?
Inline leads on clean, big inline legs with
what are we saying?
On clean spots.
Six?
Yeah, fives are fine. Anything 4 or above.
Okay.
And then I'll use a short, anything from 3 to 5-6 inch coated braid with either a curve shank or a long shank hook. And that seems to do me well on those real clean spots in the summer.
Blowback style? What we got on that?
No, I normally use a bit of shrink tube, and not shrink tube, the old sort of rubbery.
Oh, the
tubing.
silicone?
Yeah, silicone tubing.
Yeah.
And I'll position that sort of opposite the point of the hook on the shank of the hook.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that I know if I've been done.
Yeah.
So if I get a few bleeps or whatever and I wind in and that silicone's moved
It's a bit
up.
old school Nashy, mate, that is.
So, yeah.
It's a bit of old school Nashy.
I've used that for a long time. So
Yeah.
it's, again, it just gives me a bit of information. So
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And then obviously we're going to talk a little bit about bait later, probably in depth because of obviously tails at bait. But I'm guessing when it comes to bait, you're saying there you're fishing for a bite at a time, but there are things with regards to bait, hook baits, that obviously you've found over the years add things to your advantage, mate. Yeah, I'm guessing you're quite particular about that.
Hook baits massively. Yeah. I think ever since I can remember, really, like late 90s onwards, I've always glugged my hook baits or done something with them. Generally made them more buoyant.
Okay.
So that
they offset the hook.
It just little things like that give you an edge. And these days the goos, absolute massive. I went through a phase with the goos where I loved them at first, then I went off them. I was fishing again this non-publicity water that actually a matching hook bait without anything else.
Yeah.
Those big fish didn't treat it as danger. Whereas recently I've got literally that much left of a little bit of pink squid goo, and I use that with the ice tonic, or pineapple with the ice tonic, and that just tipping off my little criticals works really, really well.
For big fish?
Yeah, big fish, yeah.
Yeah, fab. Yeah.
Yeah, when you got Elliot's
yeah, I know.
topography thing.
Underwater on yours, didn't he?
And like that was one of my little secrets almost, that I'd use a little pink or a yellow topper, and he's come along, obviously put his pink squids out there on the bottom.
Mega result.
And then like every group that turned up to fish the lakes after it all got pink hook baits on. But yeah, they caught really well, to be fair. But that's tailed off a little bit now. So again, they're learning.
Yeah, they will do, mate, won't they? That's the thing, isn't it? You've got to be ahead of the curve, haven't you, really?
Yeah, definitely.
The plan.
Yeah.
Take me back. So we've talked there, we've gone on a massive segue.
Yeah, sorry,
But no, I like it. But in terms of you historically, and if you like, some of the waters that listed here, you've referenced the Essex Manor. There's other waters like Horton, etc., the complex, and others. But how did you get from a young lad who's quite sort of diverse, learning from his dad, loved to carp fish, had the bug, how did you get to sort of level up on those type of waters, mate? What went through into that process? Because there's carp fishing and then there's going to the Essex Manor, mate. They're two very different beasts. There's a lot in between that.
Time.
Yeah.
That's all it was, as a young lad from 11 years old, 12 years old, spending every day on my summer holidays out fishing what you would consider noddy lakes, and pleasure lakes, where you're getting lots of bites in a day, learning how to get even more bites. Natural progression over time. Literally, that's all it was. Each step of the way, you learnt a little bit more. Like obviously the State Lake, that taught me a lot about spots, rigs. Like, they were clever fish.
Where's this, mate?
Little Easton.
Okay.
Little day ticket lake.
Yeah.
Still an absolute beautiful lake. Still the same today. Very tricky, intimate little pond. And if you can catch them from there, you can pretty much catch them from anywhere. If you can catch them regularly, certain things again give you little edges.
What are the keys on there? Tricky little estate lake sounds like a head scratcher.
Again, that's where I learnt my glugged hook baits, critical hook baits. Like literally, I'd be setting the hooks, so the hook's almost off the bottom, so they come in, suck it up, and it's game over. You get some obviously down the process was you get a single bleep and the tail's wagging underneath the island, and you're like, oh, I've just been done. They clearly just picked my rig up and spat it out. And then you try something different and you keep trying, and then you find a rig that really works, or you stumble on something, hook bait, bait. In those days I was in between using like Activate and Shellfish B5. I'd roll my own bait and bits and pieces. So, there was a period where I was rolling my own Activate with pineapple and literally wherever I went with that, it was carnage. Hadn't caught finlay in 2 or 3 years, and then I caught it twice in a couple of weeks using that bait. But that started the process again. My interest into bait started there, really. Learning that little things, little tweaks make a big difference. So,
and rigs as well. On there, you said with regards to sort of that sort of glugging of hook baits, was it? I'm guessing it's quite silty.
Yes.
I'm guessing that the baits take on that horrible sort of silt, if you like, smell, and are pretty inert after a period of time. What glugs did you experiment with? Because it's all an experimentation process, I'm guessing. Is there that much that you drawn? Is there other influences that you've talked to or drawn from, or has it all been sort of created within yourself and sort of just being out on the bank and seeing what gets you a bite and what doesn't?
It's just seeing reactions.
Is it?
And how quick you get bites again. From buying other companies' glugs. Yeah. And then making my own out of Marmite and barbecue sauce and things like just crazy stuff, So yeah, that was sort of a big learning curve, really, in terms of, because we can all sit there with the best bivvy in the world and best rods and reels and stuff, but ultimately that where your rig is, and what's on the end of your rig with your hook and your hook bait, I think are probably the most important things, and how you feed. Like at least, and I'd feed regularly. It wouldn't be like, I wouldn't like chuck half a kilo in and sit on it as a rule. It would be 20 baits, because they're going little pond. They're going round, dropping down, having a feed, going round, dropping down, having a feed. I'd base it on what I was seeing, what information I was getting back from my alarms, and if the fish were active that day, bubbling, whatever, I put 20 baits in or 10 baits in, and then do it again a few hours. The amount of times I got bites after putting 10 baits in, within half an hour to an hour, unbelievable. And fishing different amounts of bait in different areas as well. So yeah, it's I don't know, it's probably a little bit nuts, isn't it? But
no, mate, I think that, and we're going to talk about things that you've sort of invented, but it's that type of mind, isn't it? There's always, I don't know, I've spoke to Kev about it, Al's the same. There's always, most anglers that have, have got some element whereby they're immersed and watching and they're reacting in accordance to that, whether that be finding a spot, whether that be baiting, whether that be even a rig change because of the behaviour. Maybe you switch on to zigs because you see the show's a bit different. It's that whole learning and being in that situation and sort of accruing that information and then making a move, isn't it? That is the key to sometimes an angler who might just go down and fish the same way time and time again, might blank. One day it might be on, but if you're adaptable and you can read that, and as you said, get into the mind of what's going on in the carp, then you've got half a chance of making something happen.
Yeah, I think that's where having a bit of a base trout fishing, for me back in the day, made a difference. Because so with trout fishing, you're effectively you're pulling that line at a certain pace, or you're casting out and letting it sink. Like if you're using an intermediate line, you let it sink for so many seconds before you start drawing it back. So you're learning where those fish are in the water column. Yeah, and like when you count to 10 or 15 and then again, your retrieve makes a difference. How fast, 2 or 3 really quick ones, then a slow one, and the 2 or 3 quick ones, and then the slow one, and then 4 or 5, and then you're doing different things, and then you get a bite. Yeah, it pulls back, and you're like, oh, and you found
the key.
It's and it's same with zig fishing. So I was fishing this little day ticket lake again. In February it was, and I had a few bites off the bottom first thing in the morning. Then the sun come up, beautiful, one of them beautiful February days that crisp, cold, just beautiful. But the bites just stopped, and I was like, they've got to be up in the water, like soaking up the sun. And that was the first time I chucked an adjustable zig out. Was in those days I've got this bag that has all my equipment from pike fishing, trout fishing, carp fishing,
One bag does all.
Literally one bag did all.
Go on.
and And literally my rod holder even had my trout rod in it and my pike rods and my carp rods, like everything in one bag basically. And I was like, how do I get that hook bait up but manage to change the hook bait depth? And I was like, well, I could tie a pike float on and then put a hook link above it. I didn't have a clue if it would work or not. But yeah, I've cast it out there. To my amazement, it's popped up to the surface. Like I'm letting it out really, really slowly, and then there's the pike float, and I've even got a bit of black insulation tape to tape around the red part of the pike float because I thought it might spook the fish.
Right, yeah.
It's crazy stuff. But yeah, I've obviously set it where I think I should be. I think it was like 13 foot of water. I think I put it a foot down, what I considered to be a foot down. And actually that was using a 10mm pineapple Nash pop-up in those days.
Was that your hook bait? Yeah.
Yeah, that's my hook bait. And nothing happened for 10, 15 minutes. I thought, maybe this won't work. Anyway, I've moved it 6 inches down. Before it even sat on my chair,
it's gone.
The delkin's like gone. And I'm looking at it going, what the hell's going on there? Oh, it must be a bite. Yeah. And then like 20 fish later that day, it was, and I even put a second rod on, but I only had one pike float. So I put a second rod on to a fixed zig.
At the same depth or roughly the same
depth? Because it was so up and down out there.
Right.
I got like a couple of bites on that compared to the adjustable because I could set it to the exact depth. Yeah, it was nuts.
And then before that, you hadn't seen what is essentially a zig float or a sunken submerged float. You just come up with that in your own head?
It's from when I was probably... I used to live so close to a lake that I could walk there with my Shakespeare box.
Oh yeah.
And I'd, in those summer days, I'd be using like a ledger, a running lead effectively with like big bits of crust. And if you put so much on, it would pop to the surface. So I sort of had that in my mind. I was like, as long as I can figure out a way of getting that little 10mm pop up to the right depth. Yeah. And obviously a marker float set up, use that. It's no different, is it? Effectively, it's the same thing as a marker float set up, just with a hook link on the end of it. So, yeah, worked really well.
That's mad. And so basically you've put 2 and 2 together, come up with 4 and had essentially a sub float or a zig float. From that point, zig fishing for you, and we'll talk about the topic because we are at a time of year where, yeah, it's probably tricky. It's winter. It's probably January time when this comes out, maybe a bit later. But there's a lot of times where zigs deployed at the right sort of thermocline in the water where the fish is sitting, and maybe the only way you get a bite, especially on those horrible sort of crisp, high-pressure days where there's not a lot of feeding activity. For you, that sort of revelation, if you like, and those 20 runs or whatever it was on that day, how did that take you through in terms of your zig fishing from then on? Did you start to use zigs more? Did you start to implement them on different conditions, different lakes? How did that all play in? Because it is, obviously there was off the lead fishing, there was anchored crust that you talked about there, but that's a massive jump from that to sort of what is now more conventionally known and fished as zig rigs, and a lot of people do it. But at the time when you're doing it, it's fairly fledgling, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm sure there were people using similar things at that period. But yeah, that would have probably been 97, 98.
Right.
And then fast forward to 2005 when I turned up at the Essex Manor. There's a little bit gone in between, but I hadn't fished any other deep lakes.
Okay.
I think depth is a key thing. I think you really need 10 foot plus.
Do you?
Yeah, I think for an adjustable. For it to be worthwhile, if you're fishing, if it's 8 foot, then you can get away with a fixed zig because you're never going to be too far out of that depth that they're actually swimming at. Whereas 25 foot, like the Essex Manor, you put a fixed zig at 13 foot, but you need to be at 18 foot. There's too much difference. Whereas that's where the adjustable really came in.
What do you think hooking wise? If you've got a fixed zig, do you think they're as equally effective in terms of the hooking potential of them compared to an adjustable? Or do you think there's a point at which there's a trade-off?
Possibly. It's really tricky because I think zig fishing's evolved a lot now, obviously, since the sort of 2000s. I think fish are, because more people do it, even though not many people still do it, but more people do it. There's loads of people now on the Essex Manor turn up and fish zigs. They're probably a little bit cleverer now. Like on the top lake, you'll get a couple of bleeps. You know you've just been done on the adjustables, where they've just picked the hook bait up, managed to get rid of it. I think that could also be because I'm using bigger hooks. In the old days, I always used size 10 or even size 12.
Yeah.
And they once they go in, that's it. And I think they take it that bit more readily. The traditional thing is these days we're using bigger and bigger hooks. So people are even using size 2s now, aren't they? I'm using size 4s for my bottom baits, which you would have 20 years ago. I'd have gone like, oh, I'm not using a size 4.
Remember when 8s were big? And this is an animal.
Well, and a choddy size 8 was like the norm, and then it was like 6s. Now we're on 4s. It's like
on one of those, mate. Next year,
mate, shark hooks. Isn't it? But I think the evolution of the zigs have definitely meant. I'm not sure if fixed zigs versus the first day I've used an adjustable compared to a fixed, I was sure it was because
it was that adjustable element.
But I think it was more the fact that it's in the right zone.
Yeah, you've got that flexibility, haven't you?
If your zig needs to be there, but on a fixed zig, and you've cast on a slight depression, and your fixed one's there, you're not getting a bite. Whether it's more effective at hooking it or not, if they're not actually taking the bait, you're not going to get the bite. So there is potentially a bit of a trade-off with the running adjustables, but that's where if you use fluorocarbon or braid, you've got a lot better hooking potential. Whereas if you're using like a full stretch mono, on an adjustable, there's no pressure on that hook to set the hook home.
What about, you said there braid and a fluorocarbon? Are you talking about mainline? Or are you talking about
mainline? Sorry, mainline. Yeah. Your hook link's always going to be like 10-pound double strength or a 10-pound. 8 pound.
And what sort of length have you experimented with the length between the sort of float and the hook bait? What have you come to in terms of what's the best?
With that, depending on the depth, is how far I use my hook link. So if you've 10, 15 foot water, I'll use anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 foot.
Okay.
If you start going 25 to 60 foot like Bundy's, then I might even use 5 foot as my hook link. So I want that float to be as far away from the hook bait as possible in gin clear water.
Do you think they will pick? Do you think they pick that up then?
I think initially when you first use anything, no, but
over time, again, potentially they'll learn. That's where, I used the Drennan subfloats to start with before obviously developed the actual zig float. Yeah.
And they definitely had a little bit of a shine to them. I think on a sunny day, potentially that could...
It's a bit of a glint, maybe.
I don't know. Maybe we think too much into it. I think ultimately, if you've got that hook bait in the right place and the right colour hook bait, then it's game on or game over. So
lead on those? Because obviously the lead there is running, isn't there? So there's an element there where if there's weed about or whatever, there's a potential collection point where there's 2 on that can be a bit of an issue. Do you use quite a light lead or do you use a heavy lead because of the fact that it's a zig? Or how do you factor all that in?
I generally, the size of lead that I use will be in association to the subfloat.
Okay.
So I'll literally use the minimum lead size so that the float will stay in position.
Okay.
Because if you've got a too buoyant float with too light lead, you're dragging that off the spot.
Yeah.
As you're pulling it back down or, from the surface back down to set the hook, hook in or the hook bait in the right position.
So you balance that out.
Yeah. I'll try and go slightly heavier than I think I need to. Basically 3.5 or 4 ounce lead.
And you've had no issues with that, like weed wise or?
No, I'll use a boom if I need to use a boom.
Okay.
I tie them up myself basically.
What does your boom consist of? This is from the sub float down to your lead arrangement, is it?
Yeah, so the lead to the O-ring.
Yeah.
I'll use like a 6 or 9 inch boom.
Okay.
That obviously then buffers up against the float. So if there's weed, I'll use a longer. If there's generally, I'm fishing fairly cleaner areas.
It's deep, isn't it?
And I'm just using like a little 1 inch section of like a stiff bristle filament.
Okay.
Just to give you a little bit. So again, if it lands in the silt, it gives you that ability that the line will pass through the O-ring with ease.
Hook baits, you referenced there the importance of colour, etc. For you, again, somebody who's zig fishing, you zig fished a fair bit, and we'll talk about successful chapters, etc. But where's your head at with regards to selecting a colour? Do you have a go-to starter? Does it matter on the light levels, the weather, the time of year, the type of water? Where does that all factor in, mate? Sorry, I'm punishing you, eh?
There's a lot of answers to that question. Yellow is my first port of call.
Is it always?
Yeah, always yellow.
Regardless of any time of year,
Pretty
water,
much.
conditions, anything?
Pretty much, yeah. I caught the back up in May on a yellow solar flare. I've caught 48 pounder from Kent on a yellow, solar flare and that was in March. But I generally start with yellow, and I might have 2 on yellow and 1 on black. And if I get a bite on the black, I might then put 2 on black and see whether. But as a rule, it's yellow. But yellow actually can't be seen as well as black.
Yeah,
so black stands out a lot further distance.
Yeah.
And I think with carp, they're quite instinctive, aren't they? So if a carp can't see that yellow hook bait from, say, 6 feet away, but all of a sudden it's there in its face, it's got a very short time to make that decision. Do I take it or don't I take it? Whereas with a black hook bait, it's got a long time to decide, shall I, shan't I? This is a bit dodgy. So I don't know. Again, but yellow works for me. Most of the time, yellow is the one.
Conditions for you for zigs here, like, is it your textbook high pressure days? Do you use them when, like, there's a big low pressure system come in where everybody else is probably fishing on the deck? What goes into that thought process?
For me, it's more time of year. It's more dependent on there's like a real peak time for the adjustables on certain venues. So, and I say it's like when the rape comes into flower.
Okay.
When I'm driving along and I can smell that rape seed, I'm like, oh, it's zig time.
Yeah.
It's like, because all the life is just blooming at that point.
Yeah.
And that's when they give up themselves quite easily on a zig. And that's generally mid-March to mid-April, mid to end of April. But in terms of weather, like the first time I ever stuck an adjustable out, that was a high-pressure February day. So they've come up in the water. They're wanting to sit in the sun in that thermocline. They'll find that level that they're happy at, where the water temperature is probably that tiny bit warmer because of the sun warming it up. Same again with a southwesterly. It will change slightly for different weather conditions and different times of year. So generally the peak times are spring and autumn. In the autumn you see loads of shows, don't you?
Yeah, all show, no go.
Yeah, but they will have their specific periods of time when they'll go down and feed.
Yeah.
Like last year I was on the top lake, I was fishing the deep water. Joe was fishing in the edges during the day, getting really frustrated, he actually saw the big one that I caught in the edge.
This is the carp angle piece you guys did, yeah?
And, literally 20 yards down to my right, he's trying to catch this fish. And then I'm like, I think it's all about the deep water at night when they have their feeding spells. And that's when I got my bites. I knew I was pretty much fishing for nothing during the day, but I'd made sure my rigs were reset on dark, prime, nice little bit of bait, everything's fresh on the spot. Feeding time comes and I get the bites.
How big was that pig? And it was a mega fish.
Sparky's sister was 43. So yeah, but it was a crazy. Again, that landed on a full moon. The Simo, then Sparky's sister first, then the Simo, and then I had the lady the next night as well. It was just but I can't even remember how many fish it was. I never wrote a lot of it down, which is a bit annoying. But it was good fun.
I'm guessing you're in the moon camp then, mate. Definitely.
Oh yeah, the full moons. There's
next week when we're recording this. I think.
I know next week. I'm tuna fishing.
Oh my god. What are you going to on zigs? On adjustable?
On adjustable, yeah, on the Friday. And it might even be when England are playing in the football if we make it that far.
What a day that'll be. Playing £1,000 tuna on a zig
3 o'clock.
whilst watching England.
Well, 3 o'clock, I reckon, if we win the group, that's That's when we'll be playing.
Days, mate.
Yeah. Friday the 9th.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, but it's full moon. I had actually booked it off to fish. Right. Because I do, this I said to my missus now, even if I fish once a month properly now, I want it to be at that peak too. You know, having run the lakes now for 3 years, you get to learn cycles and patterns.
Yeah, definitely.
And literally you see the lakes coming alive at certain, like new moon, full moon. And
they're alive.
In between a lot. Don't get me wrong, fish get caught. But like, just done a little film for the full moon for Carp Cafe.
Yeah. And
a few of them were quite sceptical about it. But not Cash got caught out of the mire on the morning of the full moon. 45 pound.
How many captures does that fish do?
Traditionally, it's only done 2 a year. This year, it's actually done 5, but it's been out on the full moon 3 times. So, yeah.
We had a debate. We have a debate podcast, Ash. We talk about it. We talked about the moon. A lot of people said it's in correlation to a lot of people. Henry said it's in correlation to the fact that more people will go out fishing because the full moon's there or the new moon's there. So there's more people on the bank. So because of that, there's more odds in the water and more probability of it being caught. I've definitely caught fish that are once a year fish
on the full. Yes.
Now there might be more people fishing it, and it might have made the fish, but there's more people that will fish it at other times, like the spring, and it don't come out. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that Red Mire Common that I caught.
Yes.
Full moon.
Yeah.
It's full moon weekend. I mean, yeah, it's only 30 pounder. But it's a rare fish from that lake to get caught.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me, there's too many coincidences.
Yeah.
For it not to be something.
But if you're saying you're observing your lakes and you're seeing them come to life in terms of around that moon cycle, then that's enough for me.
Yeah, we now have people book full moons specifically because of the full moon sessions, you know, like in and around. Yeah.
Going back to zig fishing, because I love it. And you've got a lot of knowledge in this area, which is good because helping my zig fishing. Your thoughts on overnight fishing with zigs? You leave them out if you zig fishing all night?
Yes and no. There were times where on the Essex Manor, absolute nightmare, but obviously only having one set of rods. I'd wind them in on dark and put bottom rigs, so cut the line off, put bottom, you know, then in the morning.
Switching back,
yeah. I did get bites at night, not loads, not enough to make me want to fish zigs at night though.
Okay.
I get the odd one, you know, the odd bonus bite.
Yeah.
But it would always be 6 o'clock in the morning or when the sun's coming up, I'd get 1 or 2 bites to start the day.
Never in the middle of the night, like midnight, 1 o'clock.
Not really, the odd one, but not, considering I'd maybe get, I don't know, half a dozen to 15 bites a spring during the day. I might get 1 or 2 at night.
Right.
So, yeah. Whether that's because they're at different levels. So during the day, I'm fishing the 2/3 there or thereabouts.
Is that your general starting point? 2/3 of the way up?
In the spring, 2/3, yeah.
Yeah. Autumn?
I don't do a lot of zig fishing. I love bait fishing.
Yeah.
Again, it's what I'm saying about on the top lake, like noticing that they go into the deep water to feed at night. Like,
trap set, job done. Yeah, you're not going to risk.
There's definitely bites to be had in the autumn. Like Bundy's fished its absolute nuts off on zigs in the autumn, but you know, you've got so much more depth there.
Yeah.
So, you know, they are spending so much more of their time in the upper layers or mid layer. Like I caught a fish, I think it was 35 foot up in 65 foot water.
Jesus, wow.
Like, so there or thereabouts halfway. And I got a hell of a bite off that. That was crazy. Like normally on the Essex Manor, they'd be like single bleeps.
Yeah.
But that bite, I was literally looking at the rod going, wow, that's a bite.
It's absolutely one tone.
Yeah, literally just melted. I was like, this is crazy. It's the same as when I caught the back up on a zig. That was actually caught on the first prototype of the adjustable zig made by Fox. So they sent it through to me to have a look at, play with. I've cast it out. I've actually snapped it first time, then I've sort of cobbled a contraption to sort of put the stem back on and whatnot, cast it out there, and a couple of hours later, I've caught the back up. But that was on, I think that was on a yellow hook bait as well. That was yellow solar flares, and but that bite I'll never forget. I got a single bleep.
Yeah.
About, because I'm having a little snooze, like middle part of the day, single bleep on. What's going on there then? To the tip and just pent round, and like one time I was like, I've never had that.
A mental.
And the back up in the net is crazy.
They're normally well finicky, aren't they? A little drop back or a little, you don't know. Yeah.
This knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah,
but the backup was known for not really fighting as well, which is a bit weird. And
did it rook apart from obviously a mega bite?
It got in the weed straight away.
Yeah.
And then you just come to the surface, and I knew straight away sort of what it was. Mate, little John's just laughing at me. Like, I can't believe you flopped that out. But yeah, that was just, I was fishing the plateau swim, fishing on top of the bar with my bottom rod. And there was an area where I'd always see big fish. I'd actually caught lindens off the top in the same spot, like 10 years
on
previous.
A zig? No,
on
the top.
On the top, yeah. And like, so I knew I'd seen a lot of big fish show in that particular area. Yeah. So I was like, well, if there's somewhere I'm going to put a zig, I might as well have a go out there. Yeah, ended up catching that one. So. But again, that's just observation, seeing over time.
Yeah,
stuff that I saw years previously, to then implement it when I had another chance. Like 2009, whenever that was, from 2000. When did I catch? 2002. So like 7 years later.
7 years later, yeah. Wow.
Same thing. Fish still doing the same things.
Hooking arrangement. Your actual hook, obviously there's a lot of stuff. We've got our sort of version, if you like, of the sort of, our zig sort of sleeves that you put on, you screw bits and different hook baits on or whatever. There's loads of different ways now. For you, are you a hair man? Do you have some sort of contraption with regards to your zigs that you use, a sleeve or anything like that?
As a rule, I'm a knotless knot. Knotless knot, no, but again, I'll use the silicone to hold the hook bait tight to the back of the hook.
And do you have a real short hair, like hardly non-existent?
Fairly short.
Yeah. Not
so short that it's like right tight up against it, but the bottom of the hook bait will be like on the curve of the hook.
Right.
So and that generally does, and then actually the last few years I've been using a bit of silicone on the eye of the hook as well.
Yeah, to stop that angle with the mono.
Yeah. And I use like a wide gape
style pattern.
Yeah. Curve shank, wide gape seemed to be what was it? Raptor Big T's.
Oh yeah, the ESP.
Back in the day, they were the first. That was the first adjustable zig hook I put out.
Was it?
So I think it was size 12.
What about now? Are you bigger hooks or are you still quite small?
Kamakura size 8s.
Yeah, bigger.
Wide gape. And I've said it before, I'd love them to do a size 10 in them. Because I think they would be an amazing zig hook. Because they'll be super sharp. And
we'll get you some size 10 floater claws, mate. You can take them home.
Are they sharp?
They're sharp, mate. They are sharp. Zig fishing. You talked about Essex Manor. Talk to me about your time in the Essex Manor. It's infamous, mate. I think I've been in this podcast studio and talked to Kev more times, maybe off camera than on camera, and various other guests about the Essex Manor. It's very much a history water, incredible fish, like the Annie, things like that. But in terms of your experience on there, what year did you get on? Who was around at the time of fishing it, and how did it all play out? Obviously, there's some zigs in there that came to good effect.
Yeah, it was 2000. I had effectively 3 seasons on there, 2005 to March 2008.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, it was, I don't know, it almost like the real peak days of the Manor, to be fair. I think, coming into the peak days, there was only a couple of 40-pounders at the time when I first joined, and by the end there were 10.
Jeez.
And then I think just after I finished, there was like 20 at one point. I'm not entirely, I think it was 20, 18 or 20. The Annie went up to basically £60.
Yeah.
From low 50s at the time when I first joined it. It was quite special. It was like quite a bit of politics at the start, especially if you did well. They obviously didn't like the fact that I turned up there. I caught a couple of 30s on my first session. Then I think I had another 3 on my second session. Then I had the zig thing just kicked off, and
You smashed them on the zigs, didn't you?
At 16 or so in 3 days.
How did that go down?
Most of that was with one rod. So yeah, I did end up having 2 rods, I think, from the second day onwards. But I think, yeah, if I'd had 2 out there the whole time, I don't know, I could maybe
full stop
20 years.
Job done.
Yeah, it's just like, again, not fishing close together, just fanned out. But the first bite came, they were basically showing in that deep water. Everyone's fishing the ledges. And I'm like, I've got to be able to put a rig out there in front of them. And I was fishing, when was I fishing? Steps. Seeing them show in a peg called 18. Like, just sort of short of halfway from 18 to halfway. And I was like, that's the swim I need to be in the next time. And yeah, turned up and put one rod out and it'd gone within an hour. And I've actually rewind that to the steps where I actually had 2 bites the first time I put a zig out. The first bite I lost, unfortunately. Like, that was a big fish and the hook just fell out of it. I was gutted.
Yeah.
And then I landed the classic 20-pound common. You know, like, that's the thing with zigs. Yes, you can catch big fish, but I think you catch a lot smaller fish, pack fish.
Yeah.
The Annie never got caught in a zig as far as I'm aware. Stella's been caught loads of times on the zig.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if the Northern got caught on a zig, I'm not sure. But the Annie never got, which is why there's certain fish that I'll go and fish for that I'm like, I'm not using zigs because it is a bait, you know, going to catch it off the bottom.
But you had the Annie, didn't you?
I did have, again off the bottom. Yeah, in March 2008. Yeah, crazy. That was a wicked day, actually. We all sat, but, you know, going back a long time ago now, we all sat in the vans in the car park, like, music on, chilling, and having the crack, like.
Yeah.
And it's like lunchtime on a Sunday, and I'm like, I really should be going home. And I've literally walking back to my swim, and the receiver's just gone into meltdown. And a few minutes later, there's the Annie swimming past me, and I'm thinking, shit, I've got her. This is it. Like, that was the only bite I had on a chod.
Was it?
Only bite I had on a chod out there. Yeah.
What type of hook bait?
That was on a white pineapple and banana corkball. One of the early days corkball pop-ups that I was producing. Yeah.
How big was the Annie when you had it?
58.
Jesus.
58.2.
Christ, 58 pounds.
But it's like the drop scales, that's quite infamous for. When that swam past me right to left, like, I just went to mush. I was just like, finally. Because I think I'd lost it each spring as well from the same swim to the right-hand side of the flat. Like, basically, my first session down there in the steps, I saw this fish show in the swim called the flat to the right.
Yeah.
And so I saw it, I heard it show. When you hear a 50-pounder for the first time show, it's like, this is
serious.
That was, you know, 100 yards the other side of the lake, and it literally was like a whale.
Yeah.
And then I was like, right, I've got a target over there. So I had a session. I lost it. I'm sure I lost it. Definitely lost it once because it was the same sort of bite and the same sort of, like, playing it for the first few minutes.
Yeah.
And then, it fell off, and it's like, your heart's in your mouth. You're just like, you
don't want to lose anything in there, mate, do you, really?
You sink. And, I mean, they were great days. I mean, some of them fish that I caught a 20-pounder now, I'm like mid-upper 40s.
That's crazy, isn't it? Is it because of obviously there was a lot of bait going in, a lot of bait.
Serious amounts of bait.
Serious amounts of bait with regards to Nash bait, mainline, everything else that was going on. But a lot of bait, but is it just generally a fertile sort of rich, it's an irrigation reservoir, isn't it? Is it that rich? I don't know. Why do you think the fish have always done so well?
Bait.
Is it? Just pure bait?
I think you've seen it. There's been a few years where not a lot of bait's gone in and they definitely drop back.
Okay.
I think no matter what lake you're on, if a lake sees bait, the fish will be bigger than they would be naturally. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
I think that goes from when they're growing as young fish. But equally, I fished a couple of lakes that, you know, they had big fish in them, but when I've turned up and applied bait,
they've got bigger.
They've gone from upper 30s to 40 pounders, and everyone's like, wow, what's going on here? You know, they don't. it's funny, isn't it? You own a bait company, there's quite a bit of stigma comes with it, unfortunately. But again, as I've always said, I'll only use the amount of bait that I think is needed. And at the end of the day, if I've got access to X amount of bait and they're eating it,
I don't think you can begrudge. Like at the end of the day, anybody who's got an edge in whatever regard, if you've got access to it and it's there, and you, as you say, it's applicable, then use it. Anybody else would.
I'm not using hundreds of kilos, not like Shelley would do. I'm talking about 5 or 10 kilos a week.
Yeah.
But that over time is a lot of bait. 10 kilos a week, 10 weeks, 100 kilo bait, which is, in relative terms, that's a lot of money for someone buying it out the shop. If you're sensible and you can get it a bit cheaper, especially with mail order companies now. But at the end of the day, if you're going to spend, I don't know, £1,000 on a new bivvy.
Yeah, exactly.
Spend that £1,000 on what's actually going to catch you the fish.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, we all love a new bivvy and new rods and stuff and to look good, but ultimately what you're putting into the lake is what gives you that prize coming back to you at some point. And if you apply your bait right, in the right areas, often enough.
I think that's a key. I found it where, like, if you can, even if it's a little bit of bait, if you can keep that bait going in on a regular, it doesn't have to be a lot. I remember fishing a water back in Leicestershire like, when I was quite young, and again, I mean, bait was expensive back then in relative terms, but if you could trickle a bit of bait in with good regularity, didn't need to be a lot. I think the fact they start to see it as almost sort of not a natural food source, but a recognisable food source, and that definitely transformed sort of the regularity factor. Definitely transformed the baiting campaign to something much better than just bunging 5 kilo in and leaving it for a month or 3 weeks.
I was fishing a lake called Lights.
Yeah,
and a swim called the Little Shit House. Little corner of the lake, and I got up a tree and I clocked this tiny little gravel spot, and I started putting a little bit of hemp, and I mean a little bit of hemp, not like loads of hemp, a little bit of hemp and a little bit of boilie, and just over the space of a few weeks, and I could turn up at midnight, drop a rig on it and have a bite by dawn every time, but purely because I could park up on the road, sneak in, put a tiny bit of bait in, and I mean, we're not talking kilos, we're talking half a kilo of bait of hemp and boilie together. But there's just the regularity of it.
Yeah.
Getting them to come back, knowing there's going to be feed there for them, and you're gaining their confidence all the time because they're feeding without a rig in play. And it was brilliant. It was great fun. I caught loads doing that. And then over time we did use more bait because they just got on it, and it went from, no, they don't eat boilies in here, to literally everyone using Profish. It was just, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So,
talk to me about other standout chapters. We've gone through the Essex Manor relatively briefly, but obviously the Annie, you had that spell where Ziggs really kicked off, and you sort of milked it, so to speak. Job done. Where else that sort of stands out? You've done a lot of fishing, I know, but in terms of captures, in terms of venues, where sticks in your mind?
Oh, I don't know. There was a good period, and after the Annie, obviously you catch a 58 pounder.
Where'd you go, mate?
Where'd you go from there? I was a little bit lost at the time. I did a small bit on Horton. I was just getting into it there, and things changed, and I couldn't get there as regular as I wanted to. So I actually gave my business partner at the time, Ed, I gave him my spots that I'd found in a certain swim on Horton. And he went on and caught Thorpe Park Common and a few others.
No.
It's me driving down the M25 in the middle of the night to go and photo that for him, going, fucking hell, that should have been me.
Cheers, mate.
But it was great. He was so happy. And at the end of the day, it was a vested interest for both of us.
Yeah, of course.
So, but like, this was before wraps. So I was like, go along there, you'll find a twig on that tree, and then you'll find a twig on so-and-so tree, and put your lead between, and that's the spot. Like, so it was quite, instead of ringing them up going, you want to fish at 12 wraps at that tree, it was literally like, find that tree, and then you'll.
Do you remember those days, mate? Walking out your lines, trying not to get them mowed through if somebody was mowing the lawns and stuff like that.
Well, I caught Dippy on, I had a spot going off the point in Snake Pit, And again,
You caught Dippy?
in
No way.
2002.
You've kept that quiet, mate.
Did I not tell you?
Not told me that.
No, yeah, quite a few people caught it, but it is a pucker carp. I love that carp. Proper old dink, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. It's a mega carp, but it's also a mega venue, isn't it? Like,
it's infamous, isn't
Snake
it?
Pit is
The old school common and
yeah.
the original. Yeah, they were good days. But I caught that relatively quickly. But yeah, I had a spot going there at like 70 yards out. But again, I'd drop my rig at the front of the swim and walk all the way down the point to a certain tree and clip up. You know, these are pretty, I guess, relatively early days of clipping up. You know, and learning that being accurate. That's where I guess my obsession with everything being fine tuned to detail, a little bit OCD, I guess. But ultimately, that catches you the fish, doesn't it? I guess.
Any more from Snake Pit or just Dippy?
I think they didn't really have names then.
Oh
I caught quite a few. I had a brace of 20-pounders on my second night. I think one of them was I think one of them was Stompers.
Right.
I caught quite a few. I think I did 15 nights, and I'm sure I had about 15 fish. So
That's
it was
epic going on there, mate.
It was, yeah. It was. I think they'd been stocked. It wasn't the same venue as it was obviously when the common was in there, and there was only a few fish.
So there was a bigger head.
But I was again just finding a bait and application that worked really well on there was the key to that. Like I just stumbled across it and.
What was the
little bit of particle, a little bit of red band, hemp, and at the time I was using shellfish B5.
Right,
but only a small. I wasn't putting loads in, just chopping a bit and a few whole ones, and those fish loved that bait. Yeah, it's good.
Oh wow,
so
that is epic. Horton that way. You said you gave you spots. Did you do Kingsmead anywhere else across the? There's a big old sheets of water around there.
Kingsmead, I got lucky. We were doing a bit of filming for CMEX, and I got lucky and caught. There's like a 40-pound leather in there now. I had it 35-pound, and I don't think it was really known about then. Just literally seen it off the bridge. Put some bait down there, dropped a rig in that day, and obviously, and during the night off it went. And
is that your biggest leather to date still? There's not many big leathers about. 35 pounds big, mate.
I don't know if it's a nude leather, but it's what you
deem a leather.
Well, there's a little story. That sort of same era as well, because that's post 2008. I was obviously fishing Kingsmead. I fished Kingsmead set because I had a gold card then the next year. Effectively because we sponsored CMEX.
Yep.
And so we got 2 gold cards, and obviously I could flip from one lake. I think because I had a gold card, I couldn't settle on one lake.
Yeah, you got so much choice.
Yeah, I went to Sandhurst, Frimley. Frimley was quite an important one with the zigs, actually, because I remember having my black and my yellow out there, and I weren't getting bites. Or I got a couple of bites, but I felt like I should have been getting more bites.
Right.
I was actually fishing them too deep to start with. And I think I started at 2 foot down and was working down 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches.
How long were you giving it?
I generally give it between half an hour and an hour.
Oh my days, yeah, okay.
So not loads of time, but enough. Because generally, if you get the hook bait in the right place, you get a bite quick.
Yeah.
If you can visibly see the fish out in that area, and you know they're showing there, or they're bubbling, they're blowing air out their gills.
Do you ever twitch it as well?
You're
not a twitcher?
No, I don't buy in. I've tried it, but it doesn't. I don't think it really makes a difference. But that was, so the black bait, the yellow bait, got a couple of bites, but I thought I'd try the brown. The moment I put brown on, I went from catching 1 or 2 to catching 10 in 48 hours.
Jesus.
And I've obviously found the depth. And it was. I had a couple of really good sessions using the adjustables on Frimley. So
brown,
but yeah, they probably from that era. Obviously I did a little bit, a small bit on Horton and Kingsmead. Not really a lot on Kingsmead. I'd love to have done more on Kingsmead because Kingsmead 1's a cool lake. Like I actually went there on work experience when Viv was there.
Did you?
And I caught the biggest catfish out the boat pool.
Oh God, how big was that at the time?
46.
Yeah, they're big.
That was 2000, year 2000.
Jeez.
And I caught the big sturgeon, and then a little carp. Caught a little carp out of Kingsmead on that sort of same time. But yeah, I would like to go back there potentially one day. But one day I was like, right, I'm going to go and fish the car park. And it was like on the moon phase.
What, you're just going to go rock up?
I was like, I'm going to rock up at the car park. Arthur was due, or what I considered. I just got it in my head.
Here we go.
Arthur's due. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go and fish it. Go out of the van, walk round, the swim's free. I'm like, fucking hell, the swim's free. I'm like, I'm having this.
You hadn't fished at all?
Never fished it, but I just had it in my head I needed to be in that swim. I don't know, I can't even remember. I'd obviously spoken to a few people, had a little look at fishing it, and yeah, rocked up, put my bucket in the swim, gone back to my van, got all my gear out the van. Where's my bait? I'd left my bait at home.
No.
I was like, what do I do now? I had bait at Horton in the freezers there. So I was like, oh, maybe it's not meant to be. So I went back to Horton for the night. Arthur got caught out that swim that night.
Shut up.
Would I have caught it? Probably not.
Yes, 100%.
But that's probably, if there was a regret, I don't know if that's going to be one of your questions at the end.
You're clear.
If there's one regret in my fishing, it wasn't fishing the car park lake when I had the opportunity, because those fish were like at their peak.
Yeah.
You
what
know,
a whim that is. I'll fish that swim.
Yeah.
He's due, and then it comes out of there.
It's, yeah.
Did you catch anything from Horton?
No. No, I blanked that night.
Oh, that is pants.
Yeah, it was bad. But yeah, I'd love to. I mean, Arthur, Heather, and the dustbin was the one for me, I think, to be honest. I'd love to call it dustbin.
Really? Why? Just character?
It's cool, isn't it?
Lived under that little...
What a shame those genetics
Yeah.
lost, really. It just before, really, wasn't it? The sort of taking eggs thing and bringing those...
Yeah. Could have kept them going a few years later,
you know, you think now what people are doing, it's amazing to try and keep some of these old genetics.
Yeah, definitely. And also you look at the sort of, I don't want to say fashion, but in terms of the sort of the bigger carp, we talked about VS, we talked about Simos, those sorts of strains, if you like, and the sort of populations of them, that whole scaly generation we tend to be in now. Sometimes when you catch like a nudie, sparsely scaled one, you're like, "Whoa, it's a map." Do you know what I mean? It's something different to the norm, isn't it?
Yeah, that's, I guess, with diversing a little bit to the lakes that I now run, when I've been fortunate to handpick a lot of the fish.
Yeah.
And I have picked some scalier ones, but some also nuder ones.
Yeah.
Some glass carp. I've got an obsession with glass carp.
Yeah.
It's like, they're just mega carp, aren't they?
They're crazy, aren't they?
They're just the colours on them. There's not even a famous fish, but a fish called Lenny out of the estate lake that I fished at back in the day.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't have a clue it was a glass carp. But it had these colours on it that every time you caught it, you're like, wow, beautiful linear. And obviously didn't have its silver pigment, which meant it had these maroons and red. It's just like,
special, isn't they?
And then fast forward basically 20 years and... Yeah, now when I'm bringing my eggs on, I'm like, that's a glass carp. I'm keeping that. Yeah, that's staying in the tank.
What's the biggest one you've got this far in terms of in your lake?
I bought a glass carp from VS at where did it? I think it went in at £12. Richie Lofthouse actually caught it a couple of weeks ago. 26.
Oh, that's mega.
So yeah, and that's a big scaly thing, a bit like Lenny, not quite a full linear, but that's going to be big. That's
special though, isn't it? Yeah. Even if it ain't that big, £26 mega must be absolutely unreal.
It'll be £30 next year, I would have thought. But I've got loads. I say loads. I've got quite a few hand picked of my own eggs that I've taken from the Mire and the Top Lake that are glass carp, and they're 10 years time, it'll be amazing to see how they get on.
An incredible glass carp fishery, mate, wouldn't you?
It's about having a mix, isn't it?
I think so.
Each one you catch isn't fully scaled because there's so many lakes now that just fully scaled. And I think you can have scales for scales' sake if you're not like... Do you know what I mean? Like those old dippies of the world.
Yeah.
Your Heathers and Dustbins and Arthurs and
completely,
they're just... I don't like these big scaly things really. I'm not a super fan. I'm not a super fan of them anyway, and I'd prefer certain scales in places that you can see as they grow, they'll mature and they'll darken up, and then they'll get a few battle scars. And yeah, I think over time they're the ones that'll be special.
But Ash, well, you've mentioned a few times, obviously, about the fishery, Ashbury Fisheries, Top Lake, the Mire. For you, I know you fished it before owning it, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Talk to me about that sort of story and how it came to be that you were owning them.
If you rewind the clock back, 2010, 2010, I think it was. I started rolling some bait for Ben, who owned the lakes, and the sweetener was I could fish whatever lakes he had. So like Ladywell, the quarry.
Yeah.
Obviously, at the time he had Cleverley, Mire, and Top Lake, and obviously Hendricks was about, and I was like, yeah, I fancy having a go for Hendricks, and that's Hendricks and Geezers was in the Top Lake. Yeah. So like one spring, I was like, 2010, I was like, I'll have a go at Hendricks. I ended up catching it off the top.
Off the top?
Yeah, it was wicked. That was just a little bit of a story. Before I had a chance at it the week before. Caught a big common next to it. Not sure what. I don't think it was Rambo. I can't remember the name of the common. Might have been Brett's common actually.
How big was that common?
34.
Yeah, no.
Nice. I had that and Hendricks taking mixers at the same time, and Hendricks actually approached my hook bait a couple of times, but didn't take it, and I was like, bastard. And then this common just come out of nowhere and nailed it. But then the next week I was fishing the other end of the lake, swim called JR's, and had a few fish like this was. Yeah, it was during the Football World Cup again.
Was it?
It was, Football World Cup, and it was empty because the World Cup was on. Like prime summertime, all the rest of it. Like no one fishes when the World Cup's on. So we literally, me and a chap called Joe, we had the place to ourselves, just running around chucking floaters at the fish, and it was great fun baiting edge spots, whatnot. But yeah, I had these group of fish taking out in the deep water from JR, sort of not quite in the middle of the lake, but that they were confident taking this big one with big set of shoulders. Because it was a little bit further away, I couldn't see what one it was.
Yeah.
And he's come up, literally this big pair of shoulders, just, and this mouth. I'll never forget this mouth just coming at me and then like closing and sinking down. Whack. And I've literally gone, I've hooked that.
Yeah, classic.
And obviously playing it, I'm thinking, this is a big fish. And then it's come out, and you've seen, again, that was like, it's not a glass carp, but it was dark.
Yeah.
Big freight. It's a beautiful carp.
I've seen Levy's obviously talks about it, but I've seen his picture. It was mega. It looks like an absolute belter of a fish.
I mean, it's known for being a bit, say, a mug fish. It got caught.
Yeah.
But still a lot of people fished for it and didn't catch it at the same time. Most people caught it, to be fair. But
the stock at that time on that lake, it's quite small, isn't it? How big's that lake?
9 acres, the Mire is.
9 acres?
Yeah, and there was quite a few fish in there, lots of commons. I think traditionally when the club had it, first of all, before Ben, they put a lot of loads of £20, £15 cricket bat commons, I call them. Yeah. There's still loads there today. Hardly ever get caught. And yeah, there was quite a few big ones. There was quite a few 30s. Ringo and Hendricks were the big two. Yeah. But yeah, when Hendricks went in there, I was just like first 40 off the top as well. That was good. But a little thing with hook baits there, actually. I know they are plastic, but the Enterprise fake mixers.
Yeah, with the little shot in them.
Yeah. For a long time, again, I'd glug them up and make sure they were balanced. Every cast, I'd make sure that the hook would sit upright when you drop it in. And yeah, that caught me a lot of fish because they'd approach it and they can't see a hook.
Yeah.
And they take it with so much more confidence.
That's a result of a top, mate. That is. What did it go? 40 what?
£40 10, I think.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's mega.
But before I caught that, I actually had in Little Bay. Excuse me. In Little Bay, one Friday it was, I was fishing a rod down in sort of halfway down the bay on a little spot that we've been baiting for a while and whatnot. And I was due to go home, And obviously a lot of people, like, in those days, 15 people would turn up to fish a Friday night on the mire. Like, every swim would be gone. But I was like, so I put a bit of bait on the spot, and I've gone and checked it, and they're all there, like just tails up, smashing the spot to bits. I'm thinking, how am I getting a rig in play now? So I've climbed up the tree, taken the 5 ounce lead off, and just free-lined it down onto the spot. Anyway, which way round was it? I think Ringo and Hendricks came in, and Ringo took my hook bait first. Again, I was using a little yellow sight bob at the time, a little bit of fake corn. And I'll never forget seeing the hook bait disappear into its mouth. And I'm thinking, well, I haven't got lead on, I've got strike.
Yeah.
And I struck, and I just struck into thin air. 50-pound fish. I mean, I didn't join it to catch Ringo, but I knew you wouldn't said no. Do you know what I mean? And then Hendricks come and done exactly the same thing. But Hendricks actually pulled the line out of my finger when it took it. And I've struck into thin air. And I've struck into thin air. So I'm up this tree going, what have I done? And then, a couple of weeks later, I actually caught Hendricks, so it was all right.
Imagine that brace at the time.
Even one of them, mate of mine actually, he caught Ringo. I think he caught it at 50 pounds 6 or something. But yeah, that's actually, that got quite a bit of bad publicity at the time, like the Keep It Real England English.
Of course.
I'm very much of that camp, if you like, in terms of I like traditional English, British carp, so to speak, carp that have grown up here over however long, rather than imported fish that
they got to be born here in your eyes.
This is
this
is hard, because I don't even think it's a tricky subject, isn't it? Because
I think it can the only way you can answer it is your personal opinion, and it's where every person decides to draw the line. It is what it is, isn't it?
You fish for what you want to fish for.
Yeah,
if it's a nice looking carp and you want to go and fish for it, why not? It's like Hendricks. People say Hendricks wasn't English, British,
totally,
whatever, but whether it was or wasn't, it was a cool looking carp.
Yeah.
But I don't like fish that are brought over here
at big weights or at any weight.
It's really like I'd actually love to get some German carp.
Yeah, they look
Belgium,
cool, aren't they?
That Belgian German strain, and bring them in at fingerlings and grow them on. I think that's potential, but like these Israeli things and
Croats and the likes of, not a bit of you.
It's only personal preference.
Yeah, of course it is.
Like at the end of the day, shoot me if you want, but that's my personal. I like a good-looking carp at the end of the day, isn't it? And, pointy tails and all the rest of it. If you want to catch them, go to France, isn't it? I slag my mate Ali big time, like, go and catch some pointy tail shitters. Make sure they're out of focus. But, no, I think you got to fish for what you want to fish for at the end of the day. And in those days, you had quality, what I'd call English carp to fish for, like tulpits.
Yeah.
That era of fish, like plodder, Italian strain, but they'd grown up there.
Yeah,
old fish, and looked to make, like the common and Leicester's and all that. That was great. That was actually, you're saying about a story, that was a great era of my fishing. I loved that. Again, taught me a lot about edge fishing, feeding, certain rigs, really, really tricky fish to catch.
Yeah, very tricky. Everyone that I've ever spoke to that's sort of set some time on there has said it's been granite.
Yeah,
to be fair.
I just say I did reasonably well. I was fortunate then that I was working to fish.
Right. Yeah.
So, I'd worked previously, and then I basically left my job. I had a bit of money behind me, and it meant I could go and fish when I wanted to fish. Like 2, 3, 4 days. Like first time I ever went there, I did 7 nights, and then packed up and went to France.
This is before the missus.
literally just before.
Jeez.
Yeah, 2003, and I met Anita 2004.
I was like, you ain't getting away with that, mate.
No, that was I was lucky to do that, really, I guess. And then it all changed. But yeah, one story with her was like, I was on the Essex Manor, actually. I think it would have been 2007 or 6, 7.
Before you caught the Annie?
Just before, yeah. I think it was the autumn before.
Right.
And it's got, I can't remember what they're called, but the first sort of deepers were it was like a little orange submarine that you cast out. And you had a big, like, real early days
Clunky,
stuff,
yeah.
big like screen that the image would be projected on. And I remember casting it out over my spot in steps, and it showed up one big fish right over where my hook bait was. And I was like, I bet that's the fucking Annie. And I'm like, I'd already done 2 nights.
Yeah.
And it was a Saturday. So I'd done my Thursday and my Friday night, which was always sort of the thing. Like, if I work hard during the week, I can get there midnight, say on Thursday, and then fish through to Saturday morning. But I'm like, I need to do Saturday night. I need to do tonight. And she's ringing me going, if you stay, that's it, we're done.
Is that what she said?
Literally.
She's giving the big ultimatum.
I think at that moment, it was like, I had a decision to make. This was either going to go somewhere.
She directly said, if you stay, it's over.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I went home with my tail between my legs.
You went home?
I went home.
Oh, that's when she knows she's won, isn't she?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if she remembers that, but it'd be funny if she does.
You can't. It's a big bluff to call, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? That is a life changer, isn't it?
But I caught it. I caught it in the end.
You did catch it.
All is well. All is. But that's where the big carp side of things and the obsession, it can take over your life. Like that moment, I could have changed my life massively.
Yeah. That's on the throw, isn't it?
She might have forgiven me.
I reckon
She might not have.
I reckon she would have, mate. You've done all right since, haven't you? Do you know what I mean? You've got a couple of kiddies and you're living the dream, haven't you? No?
It's hard work.
That's a bit.
It's hard work. It's hard work, mate. No, I mean, we're in a position now where, I'm 40 years old. We're coming into our prime of our life, really.
Yeah.
And things should only get better, shouldn't they? Especially the last few years we've all had.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, mate. Long live no more lockdowns ever, mate. They were interesting days, weren't they? In terms of living the dream, like I said there, you talked about family, you've talked about that, but owning the lakes, running the lakes, I still think, even though maybe my opinion's been a bit jaded after talking to people, the every carp angler's idea of living the dream when they're young is probably to fish full time, but ultimately to get enough about you to own your own lake to then probably fish that full time and not let anybody else ever fish it. Not that happens, but you know what I'm saying. That is the ultimate dream. I think that's sort of a stamp of like I've made it. I've got my own lake. Happy days. Is it as sort of rose tinted magical as I'm making out in my head?
It is magical.
Right.
There's no two ways about it. It is magical. Because it gives me so much that when you're just a member of a lake, you don't have control. You can't put your imprint in. If you're a bailiff, you have a say, but ultimately you don't have the final say. But equally, as good as it is, it's hard work and a lot of stress. Like I never switch off.
Yeah.
Like,
what's the stress around the stocks, around like oxygen crashes, things like that? Like
it seems like every point of the year there's something.
Yeah.
And even when you think you're out of the woods with the oxygen side of things, like this year there was lots of oxygen crashes only a few weeks ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know.
And that's a bit scary. Like our levels went down a little bit, but I've worked really hard over the last few years to build. Like we've now got oxygen going into the mire.
Okay.
I've built a big solar system, batteries, all the rest of it, and I'm hoping by sort of next spring we can be running them maybe 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
At the moment, I reckon next spring I can run them for 12 hours a day. But something going in is better, and it's like its little own ecosystem where I've got these diffusers. It's mad. Like I turned up one morning after it had been running about a month, and there's bats flying around, there's midges everywhere, there's little rudd jumping out, there's carp, there's tench jumping in this like 50-yard area. And I'm sure that's because of the diffused oxygen, like the ones we've got are 7,000 litres an hour.
Yeah.
It's definitely making a difference and has made a difference. Together with all the work that we've done around the lakes, like
what you done, fencing, security, everything, ain't you?
Well, we took over October 2019.
Yeah.
So this is just before the dreaded COVID.
Yeah, I don't even know the dates of when COVID was.
Yeah, see, we were due to go exclusive on April the 1st.
Oh, God.
And we went into lockdown March 23rd.
What a bit of luck that is.
And I was like, a lot happened in between there as well. Like, so there you are. You've just got the lakes of your dreams, a real good future ahead of you. October 2019. December, I get a phone call from the Highways Agency saying the A12's going to be extended.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm like, right, well, extra lane, that's not going to affect us. Then they send you like a map of what they're planning on doing, and you're like, shit.
Yeah.
We've just spent a serious amount of money buying the lease. Is this going to change everything? Here we are 3 years later, basically. It's now a year away from potentially starting, like big roundabout going up at the north side of the top lake. It still may change things.
Yeah.
It certainly will in terms of noise, all the rest of it. I'm hoping that it's not as drastic as what it potentially was at the start, because they've moved. Their service road is now going to be north of the A12, not our side of the A12. So between where the lake is and the so there, 2 months in, I'm like, I've got this drama going on. Then January, you start hearing about COVID. Like I remember being pigeon shooting in February on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Had my phone on the whole time, watching this thing in China, like escalating to Italy, and this is coming our way. And then like the first death in the UK, and then it's like I'll never forget Anita saying, this is like how every apocalyptic movie starts.
Yeah.
And then, it's crazy really, but yeah, there we are with X amount of bookings from April the 1st.
Sugar.
And yeah, all your plans just go out the window. Then I've got my kids.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line, isn't there? It's not a blinking...
and from that moment on, for basically 6 months, I had the kids.
Yeah.
And so I took, instead of educating them at home, we went to the lakes every day. Because at the end of the day, when you read between the lines what they said, if you can go to work, go to work.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. There wasn't a soul on the roads.
Yeah, I found that eerie, mate. Wasn't it eerie?
It was surreal.
I remember fishing Wraysbury South and not having an aeroplane over my head and thinking, this isn't right, mate. It's like Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah. I was driving to and back from the lakes most days, and sometimes I wouldn't see a car.
Mad.
And I'm thinking, no, I'm the only one like doing this. At the end of the day, I've got a fishery to protect.
Yeah, definitely.
The first week I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right. We had the public just letting themselves in, do what they want, going out in the boats. Cormorants killing my babies that I just bought from Mike Wilmot, like stabbing them, 2 dead. And after the first week, I went, right, we're keeping people on site. Yeah, I did all the forms, all the rest of it, and we kept people on site to keep security for the lakes from that moment forward. And it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Looking back, especially now when you find out they're having parties and all the rest of it, doing what the feck they wanted. Kissing girls in a lift. Kissing girls in a lift, I
don't think I think you're well within your rights to do that. It was legal, mate. You know what I mean? You got a vested interest. It's your livelihood.
Yeah, and especially as we'd spent so, like me, Dale, and Rob put an awful lot of money into buying the lease, and
I didn't realise it was that close to COVID that you took it on.
Yeah. It literally makes me like
sweat.
And Anyway, somehow we're here 3 years on, and a lot has changed. But yeah, we fenced the lakes in 5 weeks. So we re-fenced and electro-fenced to protect it from the otters and whatnot. And we've done all the gates, you know, and then the tree work. There's so much work. Like the first year I was there when they spawned the first day.
Yeah.
And I took the eggs and I hatched them.
Yeah, that's wicked.
And in between time, I dug a stock pond, and the eggs had gone back into the stock pond. And here we are now. I've got like 4 or 5 pounders swimming around in the stock pond waiting to go in next year. And they are direct descendants of the mire stock.
Mate, that's wicked. Not only that, but you have, in that area, regardless of what happens with the A12 and whatever's going to happen, you have put your stamp in terms of your mark on that particular area, and you have done for future generations with those fish, because they'll keep churning them out. If you're going to keep harvesting them, then that sort of bloodline and that stock will stay inherently in there in some form or regard. For you, the sort of day-to-day running of the fishery, obviously it's membership based, you've got your memberships, but also people can exclusively book either of the lakes, can't they?
Yeah.
So for you, what's it like in terms of the day-to-day running of it? Is it I'm guessing membership wise it's a really nice membership. They're people that you obviously know and they're good anglers and you trust them around the venue, exclusive bookings. I'm guessing there's that sort of element of people coming in that you might not know. How's that as a fishery owner?
It's tricky to balance it all.
Yeah.
You know, because the members get to fish it when it's not booked. And I have enough members so that we keep someone on site basically every night, even at this time of year when it's not booked. But in terms of the exclusive, 99% of the exclusives have been good. You know, we've had 1 or 2 iffy groups.
Worst one you've had? Come on, mate. You don't need to name them. What have they done? This is what would drive me absolutely potty if I was a fishery owner.
The worst one... So this group were really bad. They took a shit on the path up the top lake.
What is going on there in your head?
Right. But they'd gone to the extent of... So we got a few laurels, big green leaves. They'd covered it up with laurel leaves. Instead of like picking it up.
So they've gone in the middle of the path?
In the middle of the path, yeah. Yeah.
There's toilets, obviously, but there's also, I'm guessing, if for some reason medically you've got to go right there, I'm guessing there's a lot of sort of places you can dig a hole or trees or...
And that has happened as well. You know, bags hanging up in trees and stuff.
Oh, my God, mate.
But that, you know, I've had a bucket left and I stupidly opened the bucket.
Oh, that's grim.
Yeah. But they threw milk bottles over the fences. And I spent probably an hour going around the swims, cleaning the litter up. You're going to get one every now and again. That's part of the course. But yeah, I mean, I run a tight ship. Like anyone drops anything, I'm like on them. Even if cigarettes is my bugbear. Like, do you know how many
tab ends or whatever they are?
Yeah, you know, like the brown dog ends.
Yeah.
Each one of them contaminates 200 litres of water.
Really?
200 litres. So like that's my like number one thing. If I find a cigarette butt, like, yeah, I'm not happy. Little things, yeah. But that and when I questioned them about it, they were like, "Oh, it's not bad, just clearing up a bit of rubbish for how much we paid." I was like, mate, shouldn't be picking up any rubbish. You should be taking care. Like what I said to you at the start is, you find it, you leave it how you find it, and you will find it immaculate. And if you don't find it immaculate, I want to know about it.
Imagine going around his house and just like having a poo, like on his kitchen floor.
The same with dog walkers. We have dog walkers walk around and they think they can just walk through it. And I'm like, what? Would you like it if I walk through your back garden? Well, no. Well, then why you look, you know, and yeah, there's quite a few stresses. You know, you worry about the oxygen. Obviously, you worry about the stock, you know, because they're old fish.
What is the stock? What are we talking? Give me an idea.
Oh, Top Lake has over 30 30s in it now, 3 definite 40s at the moment, which, you know, we had a new 30 pounder out the other day. I have actually found out since it's done 26 before. You know, lovely 3410 big scale mirror the other day that's grown 3 or 4 pounds in the last couple of years. So there's, you know, and then we've got our stockies that are now approaching mid-20s. Like some of the fish we put in at £6-7 are 25, 26,
Jesus.
27. The mire fish, we put bigger ones in the first season, and they're now approaching upper 20s, mid to upper 20s. So that they're now going to, you know, the old guard that are slowly passing year on year will be replaced. But the mire's got about 20 or 30s in it, and some love. I think it's 836 plus fish in the mire. So there's enough big fish to go for.
Yeah, too right.
Mixed in with obviously some of the fish that we've stocked now, and loads of £20, £25 commons that don't generally see. It's amazing how they just don't get caught, like in the mire. Like you see them. I saw them spawning this year. After spawning, there was like 30 of them just sat in the shallows.
They just don't come out.
And I'm looking at them going, what are you?
What are you eating?
Yeah. So they're obviously, I mean, they'll definitely be eating Anglers bait, but both lakes are really rich, and we've done so much work.
Right.
Certainly on the mire, we've done a lot of work to improve the airflow without completely castrating it.
Yeah, of course.
Like we're doing sections at a time so that it doesn't look like we just come in and smash the place.
The life out of it. Yeah.
Everything we've done has had a reason. And yeah, it's just, again, it's a natural progression of me learning what we're doing with great support from a few of the anglers and obviously Dale and Rob who went in with me in the venture to start with.
People want to book on that or get more information, where do they go, mate?
Literally just through Instagram at the moment, but I've got a website that we're in the process of hopefully getting up online for next year to take some pressure off me, you know, in terms of the members can go and book on as well as the exclusives can go and book
Pressure
on.
off, you're living the dream, mate.
That's what everyone says when they turn up. You're living the dream. It's like, well, yes, I am, but
got another business. It's a bit busy as well, so
yeah,
it's a lot of work.
I definitely need to structure myself a little bit more moving forward and take some pressure off me, you know, because of the kids. And you know, Anita's got a really good job in the NHS, so like that's high pressure. You know, you got to be there for them as well, haven't you? So it's
I think it's a very hard balance, mate. It's very, especially in fisheries, the fishing game is a very difficult balance because inherently, like you said before, fishing takes up a lot of time, whether that be for work or an escape. It is a lot of time that you're taking away from day-to-day life and duties as a parent or a business owner or whatever else you may be. But also, it's the nature of the beast. If you own a fishery, you can't really just leave it, can you? It doesn't just run itself, does it?
No, but I am fortunate in that I do have Dale and Rob. That if say I'm sick or I've got other engagements, work, tails up wise, whatever, I do have them to fall on, plus a couple other lads who would do anything for us. You know, we've got a really great group of people that help us do the work, and that means the world to me because, you know, when I say, right, lads, we're up for doing some work this weekend, they're there, and that means so much.
Yeah, of course, mate.
And without that support, we wouldn't have been able to get anywhere near the amount of work done that we have over the last 2.5, 3 years.
I'm booking on, mate. We're getting on next year, mate. I'm going to do it. I very much look forward to.
You would have been there, wouldn't you? If it hadn't been booked, it was a shame. That was. That was the Liverpool lads who had not cash and all that.
Unbelievable! It was a good week.
They had 4. I think 4 of them had PBs that week.
Don't say that. No.
I know.
Had a crap week. Nothing came out. Absolutely dead that week, Hassan.
I know.
Ah, well, mate, wasn't meant to be, was it? No. You mentioned there, Tails Up, mate. The other business. As if your life wasn't busy enough. It's obviously the bait business, mate. Tails Up. When did you take on Tails Up?
So that was actually when I started fishing the Essex Manor, 2005.
Jeez, was it back then?
Yeah, 2005. So I did my first session. I can't remember what bait I was using. I was using someone else's bait anyway, and bought some bait from the lads on the lake actually. And then a friend of mine, Dave Mag. Do you know Dave?
He used to be here, yeah.
Yeah, he got me a deal with Tails Up.
Yeah.
Then we went for a meeting, like all the sponsors. I say all, there was like half a dozen of us, you know, at the time that were Tails Up boys. And I walked into the unit and I was like, I was quite keen and eager at the time to try and find something to really get my teeth into.
Right.
And I went away and I was like, I did a little business plan and I sent it to Martin Freeman, who owned it at the time. He'd bought it off Jim Rawcliffe.
Yes.
I think been sold a little bit of the dream that it will run itself. You make bait and make loads of money. And it wasn't quite the truth. And yeah, I gave him this business plan. I said, look, this is what I think you should do or could do. And he literally gave me a job.
No
I
way.
don't know how I blagged it, but I blagged a job.
It's been a good business plan, mate.
Probably not. I'm dyslexic, so. But I'm all right with maths. I am all right with maths, and like.
I think you can still be a pretty good. Well, you have been a very good business owner and be dyslexic, mate.
Yeah, I'm not very good at books. I need to get more disciplined at that.
That's what accountants are for, mate. Come on.
Yeah, I may need decent accountants as well. But I used to do all my own VAT. Like that was 3 days of my life every 3 months, and that used to kill me. Before kids, I couldn't do that now. Like now, I just hand the books over. Like obviously, you've got to keep it structured and all the rest of it.
You need a carp angler who's an accountant. You just pay him in boilies.
Yeah, if there's any carp anglers out there,
This is a plea.
but there might be some now these days because that the dynamics of carp angling's changed, doesn't it? If you think from back then,
fantastic accountant who's a carp angler, absolutely brilliant.
Really,
in fact, he's been on this very podcast.
Deal done.
Deal, mate. He will sort you right out.
But yeah, so yeah, it started from there. Blagged the job, and then a couple of years down the line, I ended up buying it with a chap called Ed. And
what's made you make? What year have you bought it?
2007. So just on the crash.
You are timing is
unreal,
isn't it, Ash?
Yeah, it's not ideal. But yeah, 2007. So we shit a brick, didn't we? 2008. It was like
it was dreadful.
I pulled all my advertising. Actually, it was our best year ever.
Was it bait sales wise?
Because at that point, everyone had tradesmen had loads of money underneath their pillows.
Oh yeah.
Stashed away.
Yeah.
Didn't have work, so they went fishing.
Yeah.
Traditionally, fishing does well when there is crashes and whatnot. So, but this time around, I'm not sure. But we seem to be doing all right. We're selling for this time of year. We're selling loads of bait at the moment. It's really good.
That's good, mate. But in terms of there was a spell, and I can't put a year on it, but there was a spell where it seemed like every single person had a bait company.
Yeah, that was social media.
Form.
Social media changed the game.
Yeah.
So it went from the traditional companies having a platform in the magazines because they paid for it. They paid for that advert effectively.
Yep.
To then Facebook 2008 era, 2007, 8, wasn't it? Facebook sort of started.
Yeah,
I think my photos go back to 2008. And quite a few people, that I know roughly that sort of time, they joined there or thereabouts. I think there was another platform that they were competing with, but then Facebook took off. And I think that then gave loads of people made their own bait, that free publicity to literally put a post up and go, I'm making bait, da, da, da. All of a sudden you've got 300 bait companies from a traditional 50 or whatever it
went from
may
£3 a kilo to 35 quid a kilo though, didn't it? The pricing was I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about bait in terms of the business side of things. Nash Bait, Maxi Boy, Basie, oh my God, ridiculous. They know it all. It makes sense to them. But for me, there's got to be, as a bait company that's making legitimate bait, as years have gone on, less and less in it. Surely, production costs must be high. You've got the whole Brexit shipping out deals with.
See, we went the other way. We went from 6 ingredients in a boilie to 16 now, and actually our sea monster has over 20. So it is a headache. It is a headache, but also what's happened is the profit, the margins, are much smaller now, much, much, much smaller. So whereas yesteryear you could get away with selling X amount of bait and make a decent profit, you've now got to sell X plus X, to even think of breaking even. And even recently, our electrics just doubled. Gone from 15p a unit to 35, and our rent's doubled. It's quite scary. But then we've got the corns, and the corns have really taken off.
Mate, they're top. Like, I use them in a lot of my solid bags because they're not. I fish a lot of different venues, and they're not plastic. And a lot of venues will ban plastic. A corn is not plastic, but it behaves pretty much the same. Yeah. Like, and you can leave it in a bag and it don't change buoyancy.
Yeah, I think that was 2017. So when I actually came here and showed it to Kev, and I think it was Mike Wilson at the time.
You showed corns to Mike Wilson and Kev?
Yeah.
What did Mike Wilson and Kev say?
The idea was slightly different to what it ended up being.
Okay.
So I took a tool to them.
Oh.
I wanted to make a tool so people could make them themselves.
Right.
And my dad got ill, basically. That got canned. And when COVID happened, I'd never forget my boy saying to me, "Daddy, have you made the corns yet?" He'd always go on about it. And I was about to sell Tails Up. I had like 6 people interested in buying it, all the rest of it. And I was like...
Why was that? Why were you going to sell it? Just because of everything that had gone on?
I think, things had run its course. I had the lakes.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted a slightly different direction, potentially. And I think with the corns, it was like... I literally came to selling it and I couldn't sell it. There was a little bit more involved. Like, I had the kids, so I didn't have the headspace.
Yeah.
Obviously, everything with COVID, with the lakes, it was all an absolute head fuck, to be honest. And yeah, I'd probably never been so stressed in all. You know, like Anita coming home, dealing with.
Oh God, she's NHS,
and you know, it was. You know, we're both effectively still working as well. While a lot of people were fortunate in a way to be sat at home on 80% pay and all the rest of it, and yet we're slogging our guts out for the same money and less. And there was a lot going on, and I went the corns. It was an idea, and I said, right, let's have another go. And a lad called Dan had started working for me just before COVID kicked in, and so we again. Because of the fisheries, I met a person at the lake who's a CAD designer. So, and he had contacts to do the moulds. It's all a bit mad how it happened. One conversation on Party Point one day, it sort of fell into place. So we literally designed the perfect corn shape, got that trademarked, registered designs, all the rest of it. Yeah. Protected it as much as possible. And obviously over basically about 6 to 8 months, we perfected, you know, the shape and the texture and the actual product itself.
Yeah.
And released, I think when did we release them? June 21. Eventually, June 21. And then Supercorns later that year, which give you they do what plastic can't do. They're far more buoyant and they can absorb flavours really, really well. You know, and we've got everything from critical corns to really buoyant corns. And because they're plastic free, everyone accepts them. Once you show the fishery, you know, the little card that we give out and stuff, they can't say no. You know, and now we've got 35 stockists throughout the UK and France, and some big lakes, you know, some Abbey Lake's just taken them in France. Quite a few fisheries, a couple of our first fishery, Coking Farm.
Yeah.
You know, never really heard of Coking Farm before. And then they contacted, well, no, actually the story goes, a chap who worked there ordered some black super corns.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's a fishery. And we were right at the cusp of wanting to go into the shops. So I just messaged him, I said, would you be interested in stocking them? And they're now our best customer. And Todd Bamano
That's cool out of that though, isn't it? Out of like a pretty situation to then...
Yeah, basically a year down or 9 months down the line, we're then into shops, and now we're in 35. I'd like to be in 50, 60 come spring. We get a proper machine to make them, so they're not all handmade. As long as we can get them to 99% what they are now by a machine, then we're, you know, world's your oyster type thing, isn't it? And then hopefully we can keep growing over the next few years, and I think I've even had people message me say I don't use plastic anymore because I can use these. Someone on Berners Hall the other day said he hand lined 50 yards of line in that had 2 plastic corns on. Then his mate went and caught a 45-pounder on the corns next to him.
Yeah, mate.
You know, so it's a bit of a snowball at the moment. You know, shops that initially said no to us in the spring are now coming back to us and saying yes. So yeah,
Fair play.
Hopefully, but a lot of hours and hours and hours have gone into making the mixes as good and as durable and light texture wise as they are now. You know, Dan, between me and Dan, like we've worked super hard to make them as good as we possibly can.
Mate, it's wicked. Like, fair play to you. I think that's absolutely brilliant out of that situation for that to come of it and it sort of take traction and sort of now start to grow. So, yeah, mate.
Well, next year, this time next year, it'll be, you know, to be another year on, it'll be interesting to see where we are at that point. I think, I'm looking forward to that. Future
for you, mate? You've had in recent times a difficult time, then you've sort of come through, and now when you look forward and you look at things, what are your targets? You own a fishery, you've got a bait business that's kicking off, so to speak. You've got a big year ahead of you, you've got a family, you've got a lot on your plate. But what is for you where you want to go, what you want to look at, what the future sort of holds when you think about it?
Oh, $1 million question, isn't it?
It's a tough one, I think.
I've been doing Tails Up since 2005, so 17, 18 years now. That's a big chunk of your life, isn't it?
2005, 17, 18 years ago.
Yeah, to dedicate to one thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, the lakes were only 3 years in. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's times where I'm like, I could do without this stress. Do you know what I mean? Like, for all my life, pretty much since I was a young boy, I was like, everyone dreamt of having your own lake. 100%. And then you get it and you realise all the dramas that do. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm putting pressure on myself because of the way I run it. We've not just taken it over and made it a syndicate and, like, you know, we're trying to get over the next few years, which we need to get some of that investment that we put down back, which is why I set it up as part exclusive initially. We've obviously spent a lot of money on the fishery to get it back to where it needs to be, or where I want it to be effectively. And learning solar, like, that's a minefield. Off-grid solar is like, you know, if I've watched 1,000 hours of YouTube videos on it, and I do understand it now, but there's so much to it. But now I've got two setups, basically, one for the stock pond and one for Party Point, and it's amazing what you can do with it. Yeah. It actually frustrates me that we're not doing more with the sun.
Yeah.
Because I'm hoping that we can build a system for work and be virtually self-sufficient, you know, during the main peak hours of the day when the sun's at its highest, 9 till 3 in the summer.
That'd be incredible, mate.
And hope that we can maybe not have zero costs, but be maybe 25%, something like that. So, you know, that's something to look forward to. I actually wanted to, because there was a point where we got told the electric was going from 15p to 88p, so a six-fold increase. And it was literally like, do we just shut the doors now?
Yeah.
But I think that was when the Queen died. This is all going on when the Queen died. And there was no PM. So Boris had sort of stood down but was still PM before trusts.
Oh, my days.
And it literally opened the floodgates for the energy companies to do what they wanted. Read into that what you want, really. People say, Mrs. definitely says I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, but
flat Earth.
Some would agree, definitely. But yeah, so there was that pressure, and it was like, but then we were told earlier in the year that it was going to go from 15 to 35 or 30p. And then it eventually did go from 15 to 35. But I think that was a bit like the petrol crisis early on in the year.
Yeah,
when it went up to £2 to make everyone think, oh, it's £2. But then it dropped back a little bit.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like, oh, at least it's not £2. So now we're in a situation with the electric going, well, it's 35p and not 88p. So it could be worse. But I still need to now go in, you know, it's going to be a £5,000 investment minimum. And to even give us a chance to reduce our costs, because ultimately that's what you've got to do now. You've got to look at everything to reduce your overheads to effectively survive.
Yeah,
which is sad in a way. You know, like small and medium businesses,
difficult, very difficult.
Like the pressures this winter into next year. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next as well, isn't it? So, but you can only keep going, and that's sort of been my thing. It can only get better with time, and I'll find a way. I'll always, like my missus says, I always find a way of doing what I want to do.
Fishing? What's your future? What's that saying?
Well, a lot of my fishing now is either charity, the odd little tuition. My own fishing is, if I get to do it, is generally with the family in the summer.
You got a wicked shot, mate. What's that wicked shot of you? Is it you and your boys? Who is it? I remember you sending it to me, and I thought
I've got one with the family and Nan and Grandad in the picture. With Connor with Not Cash, yeah.
Oh my God, mate! That's the you sent me that. When did you send me that? You sent it me on a WhatsApp.
Summer, yeah.
That is those photos, like, having kids and like being in that situation and like being with family, grandparents, etc. You know how much life changes so quickly, and you've experienced that, but they are so precious, mate. Like, aren't they?
Well, he caught that on his little 6-foot rod, like 9 o'clock in the morning, just as we were about to pack up. Actually, it was literally like, no, that was. He loves it as well. He gets right into it. He loves turning up at the lakes and telling all the stories to the exclusives that are there. He goes around the lakes selling corns.
Yeah, that's
like
wicked,
if the exclusives are on him, and Nancy will walk around the lakes and try and sell a few tubs of corns. But yeah, the future, obviously, it's them, isn't it? The kids.
Yeah.
You know, like I said earlier, we're trying to get a new house, which just to add a bit more stress. Oh my God. Which, I really hope it comes off. And then I've got to work really hard, haven't I? Really. So my own fishing's gone, isn't it? Really,
it's never gone, mate. You got Lucy's Bowl once a year.
Well, but that's my own fish. Like, that's what it is now, isn't it? You know, like that one night a week that I used to get as my own fishing, that went 3 years ago. You know, now I might get 2 nights 1 week, and then not another. I might not fish for another month or 6 weeks. You know, and then it'll be a charity thing, or it'll be film related work. It's generally work related. But if that's what it is,
you
then,
take it.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's time. Right, I got Sunday morning this week that I didn't think I was going to get.
Brucey bonus.
And I caught tater, and it's like one of the few fish in the mere I really wanted to catch that I hadn't caught, and fluked it. So
Carp gods, mate, you owed it.
Sometimes you get paid back, I guess, don't you? But you know, we've all worked so hard on the lakes since we took over that, you know, like James Kiger, he's had a couple of good fish. You know, he caught Bruce out the top lake. He actually caught Not Cash in September at like £41, and he literally lives and breathes the lakes with us.
Yeah,
you know, and he's a Trojan, him and George, and they'll do anything for us to help us succeed at the end of the day. So
it's good that they get results. Ash, I've thoroughly enjoyed having you in, mate. I think the podcast has been exactly as I thought it would be. A lot of structure given to me by you, but we've danced our way around a lot of topic areas. From what I've sort of surmised, you've got an incredible sort of fishing acumen, but also you're just a top bloke, mate, and I've thoroughly enjoyed having you in, so thank you so much for coming in, mate. Before you go, there is the quickfire question round, mate. You've not escaped those. And you don't know what these are, because I hand wrote these on my lovely little notepad. It might have been at around about 2 o'clock this morning. It might have been. Only use boilies for the rest of your fishing days, or use anything but boilies. Boilies.
Absolutely.
Big
you can do so much with them.
Good save. You own debate company. I'm joking. Best and worst thing about owning a fishery?
Best, the buzz when, like, one of the anglers catches one of the big ones. Like, and seeing your hard work pay off.
Yeah.
You know. The worst is the constant stress of worry, is it? Like, what's around the corner type thing, isn't it? But yeah, there's far more good than bad.
There you go. You sold it to me there at the end. Thanks. 3 celebs you'd take fishing, past or present?
I was hoping you'd actually ask me this.
Oh, go on then. He's prepped.
They'd be sport.
Yeah.
Flintoff.
But Freddie?
Yeah, got to be Freddie. He's a crack, isn't he?
He'd be all over the pedalo, mate, that boy.
It'd be chaos, wouldn't he?
Carnage.
Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Oh, he's an absolute belter.
Yeah, just love him. Who was the third? Who would be the third one? Ronnie Flintoff. There was a third one. Cricket. Football.
Football? Which football are you having?
Gaza.
That is a lawless social, mate. That is like rehab's kicked out.
But if you had a fourth one,
Who?
it'd have to be a band. Oasis.
Oh my God, that is. They'd be booted off. They wouldn't see 24 hours, would they?
Oasis or Prodigy, you'd have. That'd be nuts, wouldn't it?
Absolutely insane, mate.
So,
one venue, one carp, one era. They don't have to correlate to each other, mate.
one venue. If I could have fished, it would have been the car park.
Yeah. You'd have caught half, mate.
The era would have been the year I was fortunate enough to fish, 2000 to 2010.
Yeah.
What was the other one?
One carp.
One carp. Ooh.
Be any carp out there.
Woodlights were called Mary, but it wasn't my sort of venue. But the sort of venue that I would have been able to fish, Dustbin.
Yeah. Yeah, fair
Dustbin
dues.
from the car park, probably.
What's your idea of carp fishing hell?
Going where you're going soon.
Where am I going?
Linear.
Brutal. You've been linear. You went Oxley.
I love linear. I do love it, but it's also hell.
Fair dues.
When you get a bite and you wipe out the person next to you, or someone wipes you out.
Couple of Nash lads either side of me, mate. It'll be all right.
Yeah,
boys,
that's
if I wipe
right.
them out.
They'd be fighting, wouldn't you?
Fair play. Funniest moment on a bank?
Ooh, funniest. That's a tricky one. What's George?
Just one word, George.
George, human George. This is not my dog George.
Right.
I was playing a fish on the mire. Actually, I think it was last year. He's gone to net, and he's gone to kneel down, and he's just gone straight in.
Oh no!
But he's not just gone straight in. He's literally
face
planted, taken out my other two rods.
Oh,
they've gone flying, and I'm just sat there in hysterics at him.
Have you had a hook pull at the same time, and that would have been the ultimate?
Fortunately, I landed it, and it was the classic.
Oh,
it was like a 38 pounder, and then it was when he went in and he came back out, and the gasp, and he was just like, and I sort of for a split second I was worried, and then when I realised he was all right, I just burst into laughter.
You're not going to die. You're all right. Yeah. We can laugh at you now.
Yeah.
Drum and bass or country and western? Classic.
Neither. They're horrendous.
Come on, mate. You've got to listen to one on the way home.
Chilled drum and bass if I have to.
Chilled? Is there? Chilled.
There is a chilled drum and bass, but they are both
genre.
They're both horrific.
That's a technicality. Only fish your lakes for the rest of your life, or never fish your lakes again.
Oh.
2 o'clock in the morning, that.
Never
fish your lakes again. Okay.
There's far more out there, isn't there? I love my lakes to bits. I've caught most of the fish, so yeah, never.
Proudest moment to date?
Corns.
Oh, nice.
Within fishing, corns.
Nice. Final question: night out on the bank or a night in with the missus and children?
Friday night out on the bank, Saturday night in with the missus.
Well combined. Well done. Ash Bradbury, you're an absolute star, mate. Thank you for coming in. Thank you guys for watching and listening. I'll be back soon with another podcast. Until then, Ash, you're an absolute legend, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.